Good evening. Welcome to the September 23rd Board of Selectmen meeting. My name is Gary Daniels. I'll be chairing the meeting this evening. I would like to introduce you to the board. From your left, we have Selectman Chris Labonte, our Vice Chair Paul Dargy, Town Administrator Mark Bender, Selectman Laura Duziak, and Selectman Michael Putnam. We now invite you to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We welcome everyone viewing in from home and those in attendance this evening. We'd just ask if you wish to speak during the course of the meeting that there are microphones on your left and right. Please speak into those, speak clearly, and also give your name so that we can get that recorded for the minutes. With that, our first appointment this evening is appointment of the Library Trustee Alternative, Gloria Schooley. Hi, Gloria.
Hi. This is kind of scary.
That's not scary.
Is it that bad?
Set up that way.
Good evening.
Good evening. You have come as a recommendation to be appointed as an alternate to the board by Judy Gross.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a letter from you that you're a teacher, but I'm going to let you tell the story.
I'm actually a retired teacher as of this year, 35 years of service, most of which was in Milford. So I was approached and asked if I would be interested in being an alternate for the library trustee. And of course, being a teacher, you always love reading and books and libraries. So it's a good fit for me, and I want to keep my brain active in my retirement. So here I am.
Very good. First of all, thank you very much for your years of teaching.
You're welcome.
Any questions from the board?
Nope.
Seeing none.
Make a motion, we appoint her.
Okay. As an alternate on the Board of Trustees. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Selectman Duziak. Any further discussion? There being none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Ayes have it, and the motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
It wasn't that
That was
bad.
painless.
That wasn't that bad, was it?
No, it wasn't.
It's a little scary at first.
Thank you. I'm sure they have a lot more on their tables.
And second appointment is with Tracy Lane. Good evening.
Hi, how are you?
Doing well.
I'm
One thing I
Tracy.
had before.
It's already up there, thank you.
It's kind of like Shark Tank.
It is a little bit like Shark Tank. I'm gonna say, my name is Tracy, this is my wife Shelby, and we are Alden's Lane. So that is, I was thinking Shark Tank too. You want me to do the boxes? Okay, I'll start talking. Well, I'm not going to read through that verbatim. I tried to fit a few important points into the PowerPoint, but we have started what we are coining now is a allergy-friendly concession cart. And our goal is to be Milford's healthy, allergy-friendly concession focusing on, should I wait till she's passed out? Pass me around. Okay.
Can we share with the audience?
Oh, absolutely. We can pass those around.
Why don't we,
Yeah?
yeah,
Okay.
sure.
Well, these would probably be tough to share. Those are candy apples. But we can pass those around.
Oh, candy apple, oh, I didn't know they were pass those.
Pass them around. I think it's a coconut-covered candy apple. That would be caramel apple. Okay. So these are a little sample of the treats that we are serving, and we are building connections. I'm a Milford special education teacher. I've been living in Milford for almost 20 years and teaching in the district for 10, before that a private school in Amherst. And both of my kids have gone through the Milford school system. We are focusing mostly on community sports organizations, so Milford School, public school sports, MCAA, Hampshire United, and those type of things, not to compete with any of the parent-driven concessions or anything like that. we'd also like to be setting up on special events in Milford, like the parades and things. So we're focusing mostly on the parks in the area. So we have done private venues, and we've already developed a relationship with the school system, and we're hoping to be able to go to places like Keys Field when they're holding special events. So I thought that that entailed getting a hawkers and peddlers license, and then they directed me here. I spoke a little bit with Mr. Putnam about this meeting and coming to talk to you guys. And we're hoping that we can have permission to set up in places in Milford and mainly the parks. We also have thought about the new DMV and courthouse building as a possibility for mornings, and trailheads like the Purgatory Trail to offer healthy snacks there as well. So those are that's the focus, and those are the areas that we're looking at getting permission to set up.
Very good. So Purgatory, you
Questions?
probably want trail mix, right?
Yes, exactly, but let me go through,
Fresh
so
fruit, bottled
some of
water,
these,
juice, fresh juices.
I will, that's a picture of our setup. The camper there is a Coleman camper, takes up about one parking space, and then the tent next to it, the same. No cooking is done actually on the trailer. It's all done off under the tent with just a small griddle and one of the smaller propane tanks, and that's where we're at now in terms of being, meeting the guidelines of certification. So, and then, that's something that I was doing for our business plan, so I thought that I'd throw that in there too. We are fully insured. I've already talked a little bit about our goal. And these are some of the places we have. It's really important to us to be as local and sustainable as possible, so we are working with companies in Milford to buy as much of our products from them as we can, and to promote that for them. Some more samples. And it's not all gluten-free, so we have regular concessions. These are just an option, so this is what makes us a little bit different than some of the other vendors that are out there, that we'll have a gluten-free option for just about everybody. Gluten-friendly, and I should have, until we can get certified gluten-free, we have to call it gluten-friendly. And these are the areas that I was hoping that we would be able to set up at. And that's what it looks like when we are all done and moving in and out. So it's really small. It's not going to take up a lot of space. And I know there were some concerns about traffic. We picked areas that have parking lots, that not just on the side of the road, so that we'd have people stopping and creating traffic problems.
Is Shepherd Park too small?
Not really. No, Shepherd Park would be fine as well. That's the one by the post office?
No.
Is that-
Down here on
East
Nashville
Milford.
Street.
Down by
Okay.
the medical center, the St. Joe's, just before Cape.
Oh, yeah, no, that would be awesome. I've seen it set up there
It's in
before.
on your list.
Okay. Yes, I would love to add that. I didn't think about that in the Little League games and things there, yes.
How do you, how are you going to work this with, particularly at Keys Field, where they have the concessions?
So we talked about that with we're trying to get feedback from the community, and the concession stand is not open there very often, I was told, and we'd be setting up there mostly for the Milford Public School games. I know in the summer that's set up in some of the larger venues, but it's often not set up. We would not set up where another concession stand or a parent-operated concession stand was set up to get money for the teams. With our, I wouldn't call it a contract yet, but our discussions with the school, we're talking about giving 10% back to the sporting teams that we set up at as well, because I know that is something that, they do concessions. Parents just don't have the time to do it anymore, and so it hasn't been being done. So we're hoping to fill that void, bring the community together a little bit. The few that we have done with the sports teams have been amazing. The parents are coming up thanking us for the healthy options and not having to cook dinner that night after their soccer game. So that's been positive in that respect.
Okay. Questions from the board?
No, make a motion. Well, the only thing I've got a question on is the MCAA field. Will we control that, or is that the MCAA?
Yeah, we don't control that.
Right, so,
Yeah, we rent that out, if you will.
right,
Okay.
so that's the only place we couldn't give you permission to.
She did give us permission to set up there, not inside the field, but the concession stand there is open. It's not open very frequently at all, and so we got a corner of, I don't know, as you're facing the field, it would be to the left-hand side. She let
Oh,
us
so
set
you
up
did
there.
speak to the
Yes,
MCA,
yeah.
good.
The athletic director at the school did that communication, yeah.
Good.
The Go ahead.
Did you talk with the rec commission?
Is that Arlene?
Yes.
Yes.
She's the rec director, and there's a separate rec commission.
Okay.
Irene.
Irene, thank you for correcting me. The athletic director did speak with her. I wanted to set up an appointment with her, but I wanted him to finish that talk first, so it didn't seem like I was pestering or going over his head. But we want, hopefully get a calendar of all the events, and if we can set up and they want concession, we will be there.
Yeah, we do not have a policy right now regarding food vendors, and that may be something that we ought to be starting to think about. We've had probably maybe up to a half dozen requests before that we have just granted. So, I mean, as we go along, we'll probably work with you, but I don't think we'd be putting something in that we're gonna say you're gonna have to change
Okay.
what you're gonna do, because I think it's logical is probably the best word to use. That,
I'll
so.
make a motion, we grant them permission to pursue their goals.
Motion by Mr. Putnam, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Selectman Duziak. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay?
Thank you very much.
Ayes have it, motion carries.
Thank you guys
Thank
very
you.
much. Thank you.
Everything that's in front of you is gluten friendly. Everything. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Very welcome. Right on time, Joan. Here, a little.
So, are you ready for me?
Yes.
Okay. I had put in your package a write-up about I'd spoken with you before about losing our 2 part-time people who've got full-time with benefits jobs. And so I'm coming before the board to suggest that we, or offer one of the solutions as being hiring a full-time person, which at this point, if I hired somebody, it would probably be 10 to 12 weeks max through the end of the year. And I have just about enough in the budget to cover through the end of the year, including the benefits. That would, of course, then take us into next year, which put it on the, in the budget for the following year. However, there's that, we have to wait till March till it gets voted on. I've almost have enough in the budget on part-time hours to cover, but I don't have anything for benefits. If we were to stay with the old budget next year. If you look at, I put a little thing together here, showed you that our volume. If you look at 2018, we are you can see, if you look at the weekday, we're at 85. I think, Chris, was something you kind of wanted to see was the number of transactions per day. We average 85 a day. Now, again, all of this is taking into consideration, this is motor vehicles and vitals and dog licenses. What you don't see on here are telephone calls, which the phone doesn't stop most of the time. You don't see the marriage licenses that come in and take a half an hour. Birth certificates for the babies born in the birth cottage. In both our marriages and our birth certificates, we're averaging about two a week. Although right at the moment, we're averaging about 10 a week on the marriages. I think everybody's getting married in the fall now. And this also includes, what's on this chart includes boat transactions. So these transactions we're barely ever able to keep up with, not counting all the other stuff that we have that goes on in the office. And if you look from 2018 to 2019, the trend is on the way up. We're averaging closer to 100 transactions a day per person. The thing about on these transactions, the average that you can reasonably expect to handle per day is about 40 per person. And that, again, that's not counting all the other things that go on in the office. Also, considering we're ramping up for elections, this does not take any election time into account. And also, we have the census coming up, and that does not calculate the census. The other thing, just to note, is that we are open to the public 44 and a half hours per week, so it's not a 40-hour week, even though our staff is based on 40 hours a week, except for me. So and that 44 and a half is open to the public. That does not include, we get here staff has to come 15 minutes early, get the safe open, get everything ready, and then we are here for an hour and a half to close, because you have to reconcile everything and close out the accounts and give the deposits to the, our deposits for the next day. So, questions?
Have you advertised for part-time help?
I've done it multiple times, and last time I had to go with somebody that was not, did not have the municipal agent certification, so that's the issue. If you don't have municipal agent certification, then it's a 2-month waiting time to be trained, so that definitely would not help me by the end of the year. The other thing to note is that Bedford and Merrimack both are seeking out full-time municipal agents. So, and I just talked to Merrimack town clerk last Friday, and she said that they had to go and hire people that had to be trained, so they could not hire any trained. So that's the thing. I mean, we can do that again. Again, it's actually more costly to do that, because somebody has to work in your office for 30 days, and that's 30 actual working days, and they can't do any transactions until they've gone to training and be certified, and they can't get certified until they've done that 30 days of training.
And there was one statement in here, I wasn't quite sure. It said, my concern with hiring a full-time person and not continuing with part-time help is in training. It takes almost 2 months to get someone fully trained.
Oh, I should have said with not hiring a full-time
Okay.
person
That
and
makes
continuing
that-
with part-time.
that makes a
So
little
I'm
more
little
sense.
back. Yes, that does. My error. Any-
Selectman Labonte.
Are you going to continue with part-time help, though, or are you going to get rid of any of the part-time positions to create a full-time?
So the part-time help that I have right now is just doing as much as they can to help, but they were hired as a 1 day a week part-time person. So I would have them go back to that.
How many part-time positions, not necessarily filled, how many part-time
I had
positions are there
3.
in your department?
I had 3
There's
part-times, because that was to cover the,
How many hours for each? Or how many hours do you allot for part-time, I guess?
it's under, budgeted was 20 for one person, 8 for another, and 24 for the other.
And you're going to keep all those part-time
No.
positions? Okay.
No, the part-time will go, if we hire a full-time person, 2 part-time positions are going to go away. The 20 and 24-hour, 20-hour part-time and the 24-hour part-time would go away.
So you'll get rid of 44 hours of
Correct.
part-time, 40 hours of full-time?
Correct.
How much difference do you suppose there will be with a full-time with benefits versus 2 part-time people at 44 hours? I mean, what is the difference you're looking at increasing the budget for, say? Would it be?
Oh, it's, so it goes, we have, wait a minute, I think I have it right in front of me. We have 34.9 in the budget, and that would mean additional 3,000, it's like 2,700 would get. So if you took out that part-time person, you would add 37,400 to the full-time budget. And then it would be a 7,500 in the part-time budget,
Plus the benefits.
plus the benefits on the full-time person, correct, yeah.
So roughly an additional, I don't know, $14,000 probably for the payroll taxes and benefits.
Probably around that,
Yeah, it just depends on whether
Yeah.
it's, if
correct.
they take the insurance, the retirement.
Correct.
Is it single versus family? You have to make some
Yeah, so
assumptions.
using the worst case, it's the
Most of the time you figure on a
14,000.
family anyways, anything else is a
Yeah.
bonus, that,
Yeah. Yeah. Anybody else have any questions on that?
Any further questions from the board?
what happens if we approve you going a full-timer? How does that would have to get approved in next year's budget again for, meaning, or would that be considered,
Well, I think of what you.
would it fall like in the default budget, I guess, going forward?
I guess if we gave her the approval to hire a full-time person, that would be in next year's default budget.
Okay.
I think it would, because you're hiring off budget. Because you'd be hiring immediately, right?
Correct.
So
My assumption is it would fall in the default. I was just asking for clarification. but-
Yeah, I think Gary's right, it will fall into the default budget because we hired it this year. Anything that we've done this year has got to be carried into the default budget next year.
Mhm.
So I'm comfortable that it will be in the default budget.
Do you have any objections to waiting until after March? Meaning, how much would it affect you if we didn't approve it now and it became March?
Well, see, that's where I would have to hire two part-time people, train them for 2 months, and that would be the issue. And I don't know if anybody would want to just stay till, yeah. That one doesn't, Yeah.
It can go either way. I think there's no
Yeah.
right answer for it. I was
Yeah.
just seeing where
Yeah.
your thoughts were on that.
well, I mean, right now, that's what I can do,
Mhm.
and I wouldn't even be here if I was going to do that again, because those positions are already in my budget, and I could do that. So I'm coming here because it's getting to a point where the market is so good, people are getting jobs with benefits, it's going to be harder and harder. And I just don't want to waste the money of, you train somebody and then they get another offer someplace and then they're gone.
So you've had 3 part-timers this year,
Correct.
and 2 of them have left
For
with
full-time with
full-time
benefits.
positions.
I actually had 4. I had another
4?
person that left earlier in the year for full-time with
Yeah.
benefits. So,
How big
been a
an
struggle.
impact has that had on services to the people? If we had to shut down hours, if we had to
no.
turn people away?
No, as a matter of fact, Claire's out this week, and I'm it. So, except for lines, I mean, there might be lines and people have to wait a little bit, but usually everybody's okay. But I mean, that's what that is one of the options, is to, like, close a Wednesday. Or actually, from my try to find out that Thursday is our slow day. So I was surprised about that. So we could choose to close a day and then try to continue with the part-time.
I don't think the people would be happy with that, though.
Probably not. So,
No, my only apprehension is I really don't like hiring people off budget. Because if we can wait till March, it gives the voters
Mhm.
the opportunity to see if they want an extra person, full-time person on the town.
well, next year, I mean,
Well, I know
I
you're
mean,
gonna need
we,
all you can
there's
get.
like no question about it. Because there's 4 elections coming up, and the first one's in February, which means that time is already going to start this year. I mean, I have 15 Oh, and that's the other thing that I didn't even include in the time it takes, voter registrations. I registered 6 people to vote today. I have 15 in a folder waiting just from this week alone of new registered voters. So you have to take that into consideration as well. I mean, with the part-time, with the money that I have in the part-time budget, I almost have enough for the full-time person, not counting the benefits. So we're really just adding the benefits in there for next year. I have enough to cover them till the end of the year.
No, I understand.
Yeah,
This year, but this really-
if we were really going to do that, given elections and everything, I would say I'd have to close a day, because there's too many other things to do. I mean, I also am a bill collector, so the people that bounce checks, I have to call them. If we want to collect that money, somebody has to do that. We also have 600 dogs that are still not registered. I have not had a chance to do the civil forfeiture letters yet. That takes time. So there's a lot of other things behind the scenes that's not just registering vehicles.
And how many hours a week do you think that you're actually here working?
Well, when we don't have the additional help, it's more. I mean,
that's what I mean.
the people just, this is like our first month of not having
Having the
everybody.
part-time people?
Right. So, I mean, this week's going to be a long week.
Right.
Yeah. Well, plus, because I wanted to wait to see if we can do this instead of just starting to hire other part-timers. That, again,
Personally, I'm in support of having another full-time person. I think that it's super busy. The fact that there's only one full-time person now.
well, there's 2, me and Claire. Yeah.
Right.
Right, yeah. I mean, there's technically 2, yeah.
But
Um,
I think you're gonna continue to lose part-time help.
Right, and the other thing is we have 3 weeks, Claire still has our deputy still has 3 weeks vacation for the end of the year. That's another concern, plus some other time out. So that'll kind of impact things a bit.
I think I agree with Laura as far as I can definitely see where there may be a need going forward, but I hate to say it, but I agree with Gary as far as going with adding it now. I feel that that's like just putting it in there, and I feel that the voters more or less.
So let me put it this way to you. So we could add it now. I can put it in the budget for next year, and if it does not get voted for, I can keep that full-time person until March. And if it doesn't get voted for, I can cover it out of my budget. Do you see where I'm going with that?
But if it doesn't get voted for, it will already be in your default budget anyways.
Oh, yeah.
That's part of where my problem comes in, is I feel like at that point, that the opportunity wasn't there to decide. I'm not doubting that you may need the help or
So-
not. I just,
Yeah. So, I mean, but understand that more than likely, we'd have to close a day. Because to even have anybody that can even do the work, it's 30 days in the office of training. So that means that people couldn't even do the work until probably like, if they got hired in 2 weeks from now, like the end of October, very soonest. But more than likely not till November.
What are the chances of us getting some experienced help?
So we've tried that in the past, and again, because of what I just mentioned about Merrimack, I mean, Merrimack had no luck getting experienced help.
They're paying benefits better now,
For part-time? Yes.
full-time.
Are you asking about getting experienced help on a full-time basis or
Correct.
part-time? Full-time.
Full-time.
That's not a problem.
Right, I think it would
Correct.
be much more difficult to get experience part-time.
Part-time is what's
Yeah.
difficult, right?
Yeah.
On the training requirement, what do they consider a day? Does it have to be 8 hours, or is it 5 hours?
No, it's just a working day, yeah.
Just a
So if they
working
work, yeah.
But
So
it does, go ahead.
that'd be 6 weeks before they'd be trained up. 5 days, 30 days.
Right, it's 6 weeks.
Okay, I'm just wondering about the time per day. I mean, does it require a full-time?
They don't,
Require 8
they don't
hours.
validate that, so
Okay.
it wouldn't require full-time, but it would still be six weeks.
Further discussion?
I'll make a motion, we go ahead and approve the full-time position. I hate to, but
Motion by Mr. Putnam to approve the full-time position for the town clerk's office. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Selectman Duziak. Any further discussion? Yes, that's Mr. Bender.
I'd just like to add my support for it. I observe what goes on in the town clerk's office on a hourly and daily basis, and I can see the need. It's a tough thing to do in the mid-year. But I also like the idea of having the person added as a floater, the way we had it in 2 or 3 years ago, where the person was cross-trained in other departments. I think that's also valuable to the town.
I did forget to mention that.
Yeah, I was gonna
Just
say-
thought I'd slip that
Thank
in.
you,
for you.
thank you. Appreciate
Say,
that.
I didn't hear that before.
Yeah.
Any further discussion? There being none, the motion on the floor is to approve the hiring of a full-time position in the town clerk's office. All those in favor say aye.
but
Opposed, nay?
Nay.
Nay. And
I'm going to abstain.
abstain. So the motion fails on a tie vote. Backup plan. I mean, I'm not adverse to looking at another position. For me, it's really more the timing that I know that in the past we've got burned on some of these mid-year hirings.
And I forgotten about the floating thing that Mark had mentioned, which would be sharing with other departments to cover backups and also reduce overtime for individuals.
Could
So-
we, is there a job description for a person like that? Is that something we could have Karen
Sure.
write up a job description
For a floater?
for a floater?
Sure.
And maybe take it up at the next meeting?
Okay.
I mean, that may make a difference if we see where the time is being spent, but I think we'd want to know just how much time is going to be needed in the town clerk's office versus other places as well.
Okay, so with that failing, then my next thing is I'm going to probably be closed today. And originally, it was going to be Wednesdays. That'd be my original thought. But given my nice nifty charts here, it actually shows that that Thursdays is the slowest day in the office. Not quite sure why that is. If you look, we have 81 transactions per day on Thursdays versus 95, 90, 185. Then we have 88, given in 2019, it's 88, 95, 98, 99, and 109, so Thursday's the quietest. One thing I was going to just verify, and that's that it's not my e-regis that are the lowest on Thursdays, so I just have to verify that. But it would be a Wednesday or a Thursday. And unfortunately, my part-time person can't do Tuesdays. Well, Tuesdays are long days, so I'd never close on a Tuesday, so it'd probably be a Wednesday or a Thursday. And I will look at that. In the meantime, we can throw out the part-time position.
If you could
info
also
again.
look on, like Gary was saying, if you go with the job description to see where it's going to be used and potentially what that could save for overtime, meaning I think that may be another deciding factor that could show financially on the other side of it for justification.
that and how much are we gonna waste in training somebody only to have them go elsewhere, which we're just a stepping stone at that point for other towns.
We'll put a job description together and take another look at it at the October 14th meeting.
Yeah, or if we have time next week.
Yeah.
We have the fifth Monday forum, so we could if it's ready, we could throw in a little bit of time then. I understand the time sensitivity on this. Unfortunately, it's too bad we couldn't predict back in the beginning of the year what we would need for the year.
And the floater position was what Darlene used to do before. She went over to, so there probably already is a job description
Yeah,
for
we'll
it,
look at it.
because that's what we did before. All right, I'm going to save, I had another thing to talk about, but I'll save that till next meeting, and I'll get it back on the agenda. All right.
Thank you, Joe.
Thanks, Joan.
Mike Kaplan and Dominic LaBelle.
Good.
Evening, gentlemen.
Good evening, everybody.
How are you?
Good evening.
Thank you very much for having us all tonight.
And you're going to talk to us about the solar lease.
Yes. Happy to start at your discretion.
Anytime you're ready.
Gonna turn this mic just a little bit. Want to make sure I'm speaking clearly. Good evening, everybody. I feel a little bit odd with my back to the audience, but happy to be speaking with you all here tonight. Thank you very much for making the time to have us. I am Dominic LaBelle. This is Mike Kaplan. We're here with Olivewood Energy and Granite Apollo. We have a couple of others here in support as well. Our attorney Mark Bowden of Nixon Peabody, Vicki Chase from TRC, our environmental permitting experts, and Chris Stewart, co-founder of Granite Apollo as well. And we are here tonight to talk about the land lease option between the town of Milford and Milford Spartan Solar. So just as sort of a general bit of background on sort of who is Granite Apollo LLC. Well, we are a New Hampshire-based team focused on utility-scale solar development.
Just pull the microphone a little
Sorry,
bit
a little
closer.
too far. Sorry about that.
Can everybody hear?
We might be able to now, we could not.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Can you make that a little bigger? Is there any way?
But maybe we can
I don't
turn
think so,
the
'cause
lights
it'll go
down.
out.
Yeah, it'll cut off the top and bottom if we zoom in anymore.
Is that any better?
That's a little better.
A little better? Okay. All right, Dominic.
Apologies on any visibility issues, and I'll try to speak more clearly and with a little more volume. So we are here tonight to talk about the land lease option between the town of Milford and Milford Spartan Solar. So just as some general background points, who is Granite Apollo, who is Milford Spartan Solar? Granite Apollo is a New Hampshire-based team focused on development of utility-scale projects in and across New England. We have an office right on North Main Street in Concord, New Hampshire. We are a subsidiary of Olivewood Energy, LLC. So throughout the presentation, and you'll see in the top right of the slides that it refers to Olivewood Energy, although you may be more familiar with Granite Apollo. We're here representing both. The Olivewood team, generally speaking, has extensive experience at all stages of development with these projects. Siting, permitting, construction management, power and rec sales, and sort of general commercial operations management as well. In terms of who Milford Spartan LLC is, it's the legal entity under which the project falls and the name of the project moving forward. The name was based on what we saw as the high school mascot here in Milford, and we wanted to make it particular to the town. In terms of a general overview of the project of Milford Spartan Solar, we are proposing a 16 megawatt photovoltaic array that will be built on a combination of public and private land. Although in the initial LOI, we addressed the totality of the 119.62 acres of town land, we are anticipating that 75% or so of the land is going to continue to be controlled by the town during the lease. Our intention is to carve out non-required areas for project development, and that is going to be about 3/4 of the project, or 3/4 of the town property. The project is going to generate enough electricity for about 8,800 people, and over the course of the 40-year life of the project would help to avoid about 476,000 tons of CO2 emissions, which is the rough equivalent to what planting about 1,600 acres worth of trees would do. In terms of the town involvement in the past and moving forward, we earned the support of the Milford voters at town meeting day this past March 2019. And the town is going to continue to control the permitting process as we move forward. We'll be meeting with relevant boards as different portions of the project development stages come up, including planning, zoning, but I'll get a little bit more into that in just a moment. In terms of the direct economic benefits to the town over the course of the primary term of the lease, which is that initial 25 years, it will be about $3.5 million. There are additionally 3 5-year renewal terms. If each of the terms are exercised, it brings the total to about $6.3 million. And there is also an opportunity for revenue certainty for the town in the form of property taxes or a pilot agreement. For those who do not know what a pilot agreement is, it's an agreement between a town and a taxpayer that gives both certainty over a longer period of time. On the screen here, and apologies if you can't see it quite that well behind us, is the most up-to-date version of our preliminary site plan. As you can see, we have Route 101 sort of crossing through the middle area there. Thank you very much, Mark. The brownish red land to the west is the town property, and the yellow shaded land to the east is a private landowner that we are working with as well. As you can see by taking a look at the town land, we're actually only anticipating of the 119 acres using roughly 30 of them. That number will be sort of finalized as we move forward. And in terms of the finalization of that number, it will be with a survey that happens just before exercise of the lease. There is also a 34.5 kV line owned by Eversource, the pink line crossing the screen there, that we will be interconnecting with, and we have already engaged Eversource on initial interconnection activities. So to go back to the economic benefits for a second, I don't know about everybody else here. I'm a very visual learner. I like charts. I like graphs. In terms of the orange bars that we have there, goes year by year what the annual lease payments would be, starting at roughly $120,000 a year and escalating at the end to just over $190,000 annually. The gray through line that you'll see there is the cumulative total, matching up with the right side of the graph and ending at about $6.3 million. And it's also just important to note that the graph here does not recognize all of the potential economic benefits to the town because it does not include any sort of tax or pilot payments. In going over the lease with you all, it seemed as though the easiest way to do it would be a little bit more of a narrative structure where we sort of walk through option period, current construction period, operations, and then decommissioning, and sort of talk about for each section what we'll be up to and which portions of the lease are sort of active and incorporated with that part of the stage of development. So for the initial option period, we have agreed to, or the lease stipulates a 4-year option period with an initial 3-year option for a $2,500 option fee. If the 4th year of the option is to be required, there will be an additional $2,000 extension fee for the right to extend for the 4th year. In order to defray any sort of legal costs in the negotiation of the agreement, there's also been a legal stipend of $5,000 added to the agreement. And in terms of the reporting and making sure that the town is constantly abreast of what we're up to during this option period, we have also added a quarterly written update stipulation to the lease that basically says every quarter we'll check in with you on what we have been up to over the previous quarter, plans for the following quarter, and our current stage of development.
I was going to say, in practice, I think it's going to be a much more frequent, sorry. In practice, I would think it would be a much more frequent communication because so many of the steps in this process are actually dependent upon the town's review and approval of those steps, such as the zoning and the permitting side of it. So I think the communication is going to be much more, there's going to be much more of it than is indicated by just the quarterly. I view that as a minimum.
An excellent point, and one of the things that I was just going to get into is how much control the town will continue to maintain over the process moving forward. During that option period, all costs for any studies that we'll be completing will be borne out by us, the developer, not on the town of Milford. We'll be applying for connection to the electric grid via an interconnection request with the hosting utility. In this case, it would be Eversource. We'll also be performing additional studies to support permit applications, things like a finalized wetlands delineation. We have already done some vernal pool reports, and we'll be continuing to invest in studies moving forward to learn as much as possible about the site. We'll be applying for necessary permits and meeting with appropriate boards as we continue to progress forward. We are currently anticipating meeting with the zoning board in regards to whether this is an appropriate use of land or a variance should it be required by the board. We anticipate meeting with planning for site plan approval. And we also intend on working closely with the Conservation Commission to try to mitigate any project impacts and maximize benefits as best we can. In terms of this board, we will also continue to be actively involved here as we hope to negotiate a pilot agreement with the board. Moving on to the construction term, which begins at lease commencement, so exercising of the option. The construction term starts and the project begins to pay rent. Given that the project is not completed and not yet delivering electrons to the grid, the initial rent during the construction period will be $59,000. It's half of what it would have been during the operational term as we're building out the project. It's important to note that the project will be built safely. Our construction methods are going to be designed and built to meet the standards of both the town and the state of New Hampshire, and following all relevant codes and requirements. In terms of the impact to the community, we will do best for construction to keep those minimized. The construction term activities regarding things like road maintenance, road bonds, other considerations will all be worked out as we continue to work with those boards moving forward. Also, during the construction term, by the end of the construction term, we will have all removal costs for the project funded by the project via a removal bond. I will get a bit more into the decommissioning in just a moment, but that number is an estimate put in place by a licensed professional engineer and certified by a second licensed professional engineer. For the operations period at completion of construction, we have a primary term of 25 years with 3 5-year extensions for an up to 40-year total of the useful life of the project. The annual rent, as I mentioned earlier, starts at $119,620, and by the final term is up to $191,392, and that will be paid in quarterly installments throughout the life of the project. The security, maintenance, and all the associated costs of the build-out and operation of the project, again, will be borne by the developer and are the responsibility of the tenant and not the town of Milford. And additional operating requirements for sort of how the town would like to see the project in operation will be included in the permit, and that only comes with town and board approvals as we move through the process. At the end of the useful life of the project, there is a up to 1-year decommissioning period, during which equipment will be removed, the land will be reseeded, and we will be replacing vegetation as well. This is followed by 3 years of reseeding to make sure that the seeds that were initially planted are growing as intended. And I think it's also important to note that removal bond during every 5 years of the term will continue to be updated by licensed professional engineers, so that we always ensure that there's enough in the removal for the takedown of the project should it be needed. Lastly, again, my name is Dominic LaBelle. You can find me at dominic@graniteapollo.com or dom@olivewoodenergy.com. The phone number and address listed are for our Concord office on North Main Street, and our website is olivewoodenergy.com. Selectman Daniels, we would love to open it up for
Thank you, Dominic.
questions from the board.
Any questions from the board? Mr. Dodgy.
You had the comment about 75% of the project will be, I forget the term used, managed by the town, or?
Sure. So
Can you expand on that a little bit?
for the town, the town parcels where we started the conversation in the LOI were roughly 120 acres. We estimate that approximately 30 of those acres would actually be used by the project. And the way that the lease option has been set up, those remaining 90 acres, we would no longer have any control over those once the project is built, and it would be up to the town to determine how they're used. We would have no interest in that portion of the land. So there's about 25% of the land that we would be using for the
It's
project.
still part of the 120 acres that you're leasing. So you technically,
It's not, we're paying rent as if it was all part of the lease. But in practice, once the land that's actually going to be used for the project is defined, then the rest of the land, we no longer have rights to. It's back to the town, and the town does with it as it chooses.
Mr. Labonte?
Does that change the per acre price after?
Effectively, and that's why we moved to presenting rent on just a flat dollar amount rather than making it a per acre rent. So now the town knows what the rent is, whether we take X acres or X plus 10.
so as part of the project, you're going to fence in the thing, so it's all going to be defined, the fenced-in area is going to be your area, and you don't care about whatever's left.
Well, essentially, it'll be up to the town to determine what happens on the rest of it.
And that would be finalized via a survey, officially laying out exactly where those lines would be.
So we could use that for recreational purposes or whatever we deem appropriate?
Yes.
Would we be able to build on it, like a dog park or something?
It'd be entirely up to the town.
Our interest in it would be entirely removed. It would no longer be a portion of the lease.
There would be our fenced-in area and then our access road, and the rest of it was just for the town.
Just follow up.
So one of the biggest variables that the town wouldn't know, going with the presumption if you're going to stay with your presumable 30 acres, when you lease the land, meaning you're obligated to either paying real property taxes or a pilot. So automatically, the town would go back to knowing that we're not going to collect anything off 90 acres.
I guess you could think of it that way. We were the project size was going to be within a narrow band either way, and the property tax or pilot payment was going to be really more a function of the project size. And since we're still looking to be at 16 megawatts, pretty close to where we had hoped to be, the pilot or property tax should wind up being roughly the same to the town. It's just not going to be on the same acres.
I guess
Understand the question?
just going with, I guess where I'm going is I've heard nothing as far as talk of what potentially the pilot's going to be. So I guess I don't know what conversations you guys have had as far as where it's going to be. I guess from my perspective, if you're taking 90 acres out of it, you're definitely taking a big devaluation, meaning you're taking a big number of valuation of land out that, let's assume you were going to pay real taxes, just for conversation versus the pilot. By taking 90 acres out, my assumption is that you're taking a big chunk of value away from the project on land.
I think you have to look at the pilot based on the 16 megawatts in its entirety, whether it's on public property or private property. The pilot is still going to be in place for the entire project.
But I understand what you're saying on the solar project itself, but I'm saying if the Brock's property is assessed at, let's just throw a number of $2.1 million. If you're only utilizing 25% of it, then going back to if you're paying the real taxes, you're only going to pay on $550,000.
Well, it's up to the town how the rest of the land is used and whether that is for recreational use or if the town determines that it's other commercial or other development.
I guess I'm understanding what you're saying, but I'm just saying from the town standpoint, there's a value number that changed there, but by not utilizing the whole 120 acres.
No, I don't think so.
They've shifted part of it to private property. The amount of money that's spent on equipment is going to be the same.
Yep.
So the taxes, either pilot or regular taxes, would be the same. It's just not on Milford's property, part of it's on private property.
But the land value taxes would be less.
But
Because
they're
if
not paying that.
I guess according to the contract, the way I read it, if we can't agree on a pilot, they pay real property tax on the land they lease. Am I mistaken on that?
The land value is going to, it's kind of a circle. It winds up being the value of the project.
I guess this would be a Marty question, because I feel the land has value sitting today, the way, meaning if we go on our tax cards now, there's an actual value listed on that tax card today.
Well, and I guess that value is, like I said, if it's attributable to how it's currently being used, that 75% could continue to be used the way it's being used now.
I guess I'm just not articulating my
We
question.
could still
the
look
right
at it as commercial and industrial property that's still available for future development.
Have you negotiated any pilot agreements with other communities within New Hampshire?
Yes, we have. They haven't publicly released them yet, so I can't say the specific contents, but we have a form that we could provide you soon to begin to, or provide you this week to begin to get your comment on and thoughts on.
It would just give us an indication as to what, a standard arrangement would be. So we would like to see that.
Okay,
Yeah.
we can provide that.
And I guess that may answer part of my question. I remember talking with Dominic before that basically you guys had made mention that if you had a $20 million, we'll go with for conversation, a $20 million project you're putting on it, if the land's worth 22, the land's worth 2, that gives you a full project of $22 million value.
The way the pilots are usually set up is there's a certain number of dollars per year per megawatt. That's the way they're typically established, and then that would be a fixed payment, fixed or fixed with some kind of set escalation over the term of the pilot. And we can provide some additional information about like the different numbers that we've seen in different contexts as part of the discussions with the board.
Okay. Like I said, by knowing where the pilot's going to potentially go may answer more of my questions.
Well, we're going to do this in 2 stages. We're here tonight to discuss the lease and hopefully get board approval on the lease. We'll be back to talk about the pilot. The pilot revenue is going to be lower than we originally thought because the project's smaller. It started off as a 20 megawatt project. We're down to 16. So that is going to have a small impact on the pilot. But the lease hasn't changed. The lease revenue to the town hasn't changed, even though the project is down significantly in the use of town property from 119 acres to about 30 acres or
Roughly
so.
30, yeah.
Other questions? Dominic, I heard you say that the power generator would take care of about 8,800 homes? Is that
8,800 people.
8,800 people?
Yes.
Is there any way that that can be targeted to a local community, or are you forced to put it onto a grid and it get dispersed from there?
Sure. Well, there are a few potential ways that we could try and keep the power locally. It could be that if Milford or another community in the area is participating in a municipal aggregation program, we're open to selling power to one of those programs. To the extent that the net metering legislation evolves over time, there may be an additional way for us to sell locally through that, but we can find ways whether that happens or doesn't. In addition, we've already begun reaching out to some kind of large commercial and industrial buyers of power in New Hampshire as well, and have received interest from them from buying power from local solar projects. So there's a range of ways, and we're open to taking the time to work with you to find the right one.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
There's the legislature this year worked on the authority to give municipalities the ability to aggregate power for residents. This is all very new. I've gotten into conversations with a few people about it. Mike and I had a conversation about it. I think we've got a few years to work this out, but at least things are moving in that direction, where when we first started our conversation about the letter of intent, I don't think there was any way that this power could have been used to benefit Milford. But things are evolving now where it looks like it could. And I think by the time this is in place, hopefully we have a higher net metering cap and better abilities to aggregate for the town residents and make that a possibility to use the renewable power.
Okay. Any further questions from the board?
Are we asking questions in general just about the whole lease, or?
If you have questions about the thing, because our intent is to vote on this tonight.
Okay.
So if you have questions, and we've got the gentleman here, would be the time to try to get an answer.
Granted, you haven't gone through the, I'm going to call it the option phase first, the 3 years as far as to study things. What is your best guess on your construction start time, if you were to get an approval for it?
I'd say it would be no earlier than 2021.
And then where would that bring you as far as construction and full production, or full?
So it depends on the time of year that the construction begins, but the active construction is probably in the, like, say, 3 to 5 month range.
Basically, what I was trying to determine is the length of time in your construction phase at the $59,000 a year before you go to full.
Yeah, and the variable there is likely to be, is there some small construction activity that happens in late fall that, or is deemed construction, and so we are in the construction period, but we can't do the rest of the work until the spring?
So-
That's the factor that
So
might
with
stretch it out.
with that being said, in the construction phase, you'd be generating absolutely no power. There'd never be a point where you're partial power generating.
Correct.
Um,
Well, I guess I'll also add the caveat. At the very end of construction, there's a phase where they're testing, and there might be some test power for a couple of weeks. Not a material amount.
Okay. One other question I did have, and I don't know, 32B we had discussed as far as the indemnification clause. Did we ever figure any of that part out?
We did. We did.
Been able to deal with.
Bill? We did figure that out, and we made a modification in this lease to handle that, and Attorney Drescher and Mike Ricker, the attorney for Primex, are both in agreement and supporting it.
Is that going to cost us anything?
No,
I believe that Ricker indicated you already have this coverage.
we do, yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr.
We
Drescher.
asked that PowerPoint presentation be emailed. Is that possible?
It was posted with the board packet, and we'll post it on the town website also. If you want a copy of it,
I'd love one.
I'll send you one.
More paper.
And I guess my last one still goes back to the pilot. I guess before I'd like to sign on anything, I'd like more information as far as regarding the pilot. I think the pilot's going to be a big number. We're talking 40 years, Mark.
This is, well, but it's two phases. Vote on the lease tonight. If we don't reach agreement on the pilot, I don't think we've got a deal.
I think that's a critical point.
Yeah.
You don't have to enter into pilot.
Your microphone.
The board is not obliged under the statute or under the agreement to enter into a pilot. They're obliged only to discuss it and possibly to arrive at it. If they don't, the agreement provides, and the applicable statutes also provide, that the taxes would be chargeable to the tenant in the same manner that they would be to a private landowner, which I presume would give the tenant the ability to place unused land in current use, the same way a private landowner would be able to.
Further questions?
I just still feel better. I guess to me, I feel everything thrown out there. I guess I don't know if it's something that you could provide to us in the next week or two. I guess I'm just confused on what would change, whether you got an approval tonight or I'm going to say 2 weeks from now. That's just my perception on it. I feel that there's a lot of different things that hinge on.
It sounded to me, according to their answers, that, because when you said that you had the pilot with, but you can't announce things, how long have you been in an agreement with that town?
Trying to think of the clearest way to express it without saying something that might be beyond what they would want to share. But we had I'd say, an efficient and quick discussion with them, and we've had I'd say an agreement that has not yet been voted on yet.
I'm not
at least a
talking
month.
specifically about the
Sure.
pilot.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the project. You know, we've
Oh.
identified two things. You know,
Oh.
we've got the lease before
Sure.
us tonight, and we said we could do the pilot later.
Yeah.
And what I
Oh.
took your statement as, that you've already entered into a lease with another town to do something, and now you're working on the pilot part of that. So-
Typically, typically it is in two phases. There is one town with whom the pilot was wrapped into the lease, but it hasn't been released yet.
Okay.
The typical process is that there's a lease for the land, and then at some subsequent point in time, a pilot is negotiated.
Yes.
In the beginning lease, the $2,500 part, because you'd be considered leasing the land from the town, you'd be obligated to pay taxes at that point, being a leasee.
No,
The
we're
town
not,
attorney saying yes.
Say that again?
As soon as they start leasing land, whenever the town leases land, the leaser, that's the one that leases, lesser,
That's you.
sorry, the person that's leasing it pays the taxes.
Leasing.
Correct.
Leasee, sorry.
the lease doesn't start until the option. The lease begins when the option is exercised. So during this the option period is when we're doing the diligence, getting permits, getting the right to connect to the grid. During that phase, we are not yet leasing the land. The lease commences once
Just
the
an
town has
option.
approved the permit and the right to connect to the grid has been approved. That's when we technically begin to lease the land.
That may
Microphone.
be the intent, and I think it depends on what they do.
Yeah, sorry.
Thank you. Just hold it.
What they do with the option, if they control the property completely so that they can exclude us or the public, I suspect that under the statute, RSA 72:23, they would be responsible for the taxes in that instance as well. If all they're doing is occasionally going out there with everyone else still entitled to use that property, but exploring or digging test pits or whatever to determine the suitability of the place, I don't think that would be an issue. But
So-
if they are in a position to exclude the public and exclude the rest of us, then they might as well be leasing it under the option agreement. And that is a written agreement, because the statute says leases or other agreements, and that's where, at least that's the position I would take. Again, you folks have the ability to either deny the pilot, which, by the way, for the benefit of the audience, that's a payment in lieu of taxes, which is something that you agree to get less than the full amount, because you have some reason to anticipate that this is a benefit to the town. So, and the other point I would make is that I think somebody used the word approval of the project. If you have a vote of approval tonight, it's a vote agreeing among the board that you want to enter into the agreement. The project approval itself is going to have to undergo possibly zoning board of adjustment approval on several points. I think they have to come back to the selectmen to get a permit on a Class 6 road, which is commonly done, and whatever else is out there, and I don't know what the planning board has in store, but that's their problem, because they have to meet that.
Further questions from the board? Mr. Labonte?
When you go to the land lease option and lease agreement, on 1A, when it says that the fact, where did it go? Landlord hereby grants tenant the exclusive and irrevocable right, an option to, so would that be, meaning basically saying they're taking the whole land themselves?
Yep.
So then we go back to, as I'm saying, the tax or pilot.
My position would be that once the option is exercised in the, with that language, and they can exclude anybody from the property, they're gonna owe the taxes. And we don't really have a choice on that. RSA 7223 says they have to. It also is another statute that allows you the option of giving them a pilot in lieu of taxes. So I suspect once that occurs and they see a tax bill from Marty Noel, there'll be a discussion about the pilot.
So just to emphasize one thing that was said about Attorney Drescher, Attorney Drescher mentioned that once the option is exercised, so this, what will be expected typically is once the project is beginning construction, that's when the tax payments would begin. That's
But the option's a $2,500 section, right?
for the option period.
Right, it's 2,500. Right, so this is the land lease option
And lease
and
agreement.
lease agreement, which would be both of them, correct? I guess I
Yes.
just want to make sure we're saying the same thing. So if we sign this tonight, you'd start paying, if Marty was to do a bill tomorrow, if tax bills were due tomorrow, meaning sent out tomorrow, you guys would get a bill.
That would be highly unusual. So that's why.
I guess
So that's why. So just to back up, the lease. So typically, what happens, and Attorney Drescher, correct me when you believe I'm misstating this, but typically what happens is once a project commences construction, that's when once an option has been exercised, that's when the taxes begin. The option exercise is after this diligence period, and we go through and get approval for zoning and permits and all the other steps that are required.
I believe that if they have exclusive control during the option period, there'll be taxes. I think it's a matter that is not significant because the property would still be property that hasn't been developed. The assessment would reflect that until there's construction of a unit on it. Once they start building on it, Marty will be up there raising the assessment, and then there'll be a great incentive on their part to come in and talk to you about the pilot. But it's out there, it hasn't happened yet.
I guess I'm just confused on, I understand where you're going for, say, like you could put it in current use, which, and feel free for anyone to correct me when I go astray with this. When you typically, a landowner typically puts their own land in current use, when they pull it out, they pay 10%
Correct.
a market value penalty, or as they call it, for taking it out. So when you don't own the land and you put it in current use, do you still pay the penalty when you take it out?
Well, if the lease agreement and the option agreement say that they have the exclusive control over it, the law says they've got to pay the applicable taxes. We don't have a choice on that, except to the extent that you're allowed to enter into a payment in lieu of taxes agreement, which is, as I said, is going to be a great deal of incentive to them down the road, but I don't imagine that the taxes at this point are all that much money. I mean, in view of the fact that it's undeveloped property, unimproved, I imagine the assessment is fairly low. If they're out there exploring on it, I think Marty might have something to say about whether that's eligible for current use under those circumstances. But again, that's up to the assessors, and it's above my pay grade, but I believe that they're going to be responsible for those taxes.
I guess it just goes back to the point I'm trying to make, as a clarification, whether it be on property taxes or a pilot. I'd like to see before entering the agreement. That's my opinion and where I'm going with that.
Further questions from the board? Mr. Bender, did you want to add anything to what's been said?
I had some comments I wanted to make earlier. A lot of it's been said. From the town's perspective, yeah, I really want to thank Attorney Drescher and Attorney Tom Quinn and also Mike Ricker from Primex for all of their assistance and contributions. This was really a very complex document, and it took a lot of time to work through it. Mike and Dominic, your team, including your legal team, persevered throughout a lot of months of negotiation, and it was a pretty tough process. We added some things from the original letter of intent. The additional year in the option, the $5,000 legal stipend was new. We mentioned that you'll be doing a lot of studies, surveys, and other documentation about wetlands and other technical studies in the event that the project is not built. And I think that's a remote possibility, but it's always out there. But all of those documents become the property of the town, and that's a big help to us if we pursue other commercial and industrial uses. The construction term was not part of the LOI. That's something that we came up with during our process. It's 50% of the first annual first 5-year installment period. We also changed the decommissioning security. There was that 7-year language. I never understood it, still don't. But we changed that to the commercial operations date. And then the work that we did with the indemnity clauses to get everybody together is a good process. I won't say it was fun, but it was a good process.
Mr. Drescher, would you like to add anything to that?
Only that the document's length is suitable for...
Microphone.
It'll cure your insomnia. It's a monster. And it's the length of it is driven in large measure, I'm sure they will agree, by the likelihood that they're going to mortgage this to a bank, the structure itself. Is that a fair statement? The lease.
That's a fair simplification of it, yeah.
And the only question I would have of them is what is the likelihood of you actually being the owner that builds this? Or is this something that you will sell or assign to a third party that steps into those shoes?
It's likely that it would be a large owner-operator that would come in to be the one to construct it once we have everything ready. And then ideally we would have kind of ongoing minority participation in it, but typically it is a very large entity that wants to actually own it once everything has been prepared and set up for construction.
So once you get all your approvals lined up, and assuming that happens, then you can assign this to somebody else and, or in essence, sell the lease, because the language in that agreement provides for that.
Yes, the package of everything, of the permits, all the agreements, everything that makes it all work together as a project.
Just,
Mr. Bender?
yeah, just a final comment on the pilot, and then I'm going to let it go. I know how hard we worked on the lease, and there was give and take on both sides. I'm very confident that we'll persevere and get a pilot in place. We have other towns that are going through this, and I feel very comfortable that we'll reach an agreement that benefits the town of Milford.
Selectman Labonte?
I know at one point there was discussions as far as after the planning and zoning process. Is there anything in the lease that says if you get your planning and zoning approval May 1st, a time limit on when you have to switch over to the construction from the $2,500 phase?
No. No.
I just remember that was a question that had
I
come
think
up.
it's up to them as to when they want to declare that construction starts.
And we would want to do that expeditiously,
Yeah.
given that we don't produce any revenue until the project is built.
Either way, I just thought I'd throw the question. The question was out there before, and I just hadn't received an answer for it, so I just. Okay.
Seeing any further questions from the board? Seeing
Make a
none?
motion, we go ahead and approve the lease.
Motion by Selectman Putnam to approve the lease. Is there a second?
Does the discussion come after from the public? Because I feel we really need to include the public.
Okay, well, hold off on comments from the public.
Hi. Is this mic on? Yeah, okay. I'm Audrey Fraser. I live on Summer Street. These questions are based on your presentation. Thanks for inviting me. Thanks for the call. So I'm curious if you have any idea of the 90 acres not used in the project, how much of that is wetland?
I'm not sure that I have a number for that. We could provide that.
That's something that we could
Yeah, we could
follow up
provide
on,
that.
but I don't have it up. But I don't have it in front of me.
So I'm just not sure if the 90 acres that's left for the town to do something with is actually going to be left with 50 acres because the wetlands obviously aren't going to be where the site is.
If you look at the layout provided in that packet there, it shows that the basically all of the northwest portions of the land are cleared and
Yeah.
are not wet. It would not be part of the project either.
So the 16 megawatts, that's specific to the town land, or does that include the private land?
The totality of the project.
The totality of the project. So in the research I did today for the photovoltaic solar, I thought you needed 40 acres for 16 megawatts. Is that approximately true? Or is this, what kind of solar is it?
We are using photovoltaic. The current plan that we have in place has us using in the neighborhood of 65 to 70 total acres.
That's private and town?
Yes.
Okay.
I'll just let you do everything.
All right, and then I just happened to be in Boston at UMass Boston for a climate summit with the Environmental Business Council and UMass Boston climate change people. And it's awesome that over 40 years you can save that much CO2 emissions. But when what really comes to people's hearts is in our own health. And you're going to be clearing the property to be able to put the solar in. And right across the highway is where Milford's densest population is. And so you're going to be actually potentially in Milford increasing our CO2 emissions because all those trees are going to be gone. You know, is there a mitigation of where you're going to plant trees in Milford, or the town's planning to restore property because we're looking at acreage that's actually clearing trees that's actually going to contribute to Milford's CO2 emissions?
So essentially, what is the net impact to Milford, or just what are the different mitigation steps that we could look at?
Yeah.
Well, we'd be happy to sit down and talk with whatever the appropriate group is within the town regarding what mitigation steps the town thinks would make the most sense, and see if there's a balance that we can, of expectations that we can meet. In terms of, be it planting trees in a particular location or some other type of project, we'd be happy to sit down and have that conversation and see what the right answer is.
As we mentioned during the presentation, it is our intention to meet with the Conservation Commission, who I imagine is likely the authority here in town on a question like that.
Advisors in New Hampshire. Let's see. And I was wondering on the whole process when the property would be cut. So once construction started, after your studies are complete, So I'm curious, the town wouldn't go in and cut the property prior to saying go ahead.
Certainly not based on us. I mean, it would be our view that it should wait until construction. That we wouldn't want trees to be cut for no reason. So,
That would be my hope, too. And when I was looking at the map, and it would be nice to have this larger, because it's not really a formal plan. It doesn't show a true wetland delineation and buffer. So in this, it looks like it's relatively close. And I'm wondering how far outside the fenced-in area the trees need to be maintained and cut down so that they're not creating shadow onto the, or is that area going to be fenced?
do you?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that question one more time?
So you don't want trees right next to your panels, right? Because they're going to create shade, lower the amount of power you can get from them. So I'm wondering if the fenced-in area is going to be include the buffer that you need for
Is
your
there any
trees.
buffer beyond the fencing in that?
Buffer beyond the fencing, in this agreement? I
I don't think so.
don't believe so, no.
So within the fencing,
We could go back and confirm.
so the fencing's not going to just be tightly around the panels. There'll be an area that you'll be
Yes.
cut. And that's in the calculations, your land
Yes.
calculations?
The land calculations we've been giving are inside the fence land.
Okay, thank you. So you guys did great answering a lot of my questions as you went along. Thank you. On the graph that you had that shows the revenues for the town, it appears that that doesn't include potentially the first 5 years of leasing. Is that correct? So it would start earlier?
It does not include the construction period. We put in just the operating phase.
There would be additional revenue provided via the construction period and also pilot other things like that.
So it could potentially be, if there's the 4 initial years of leasing, it could potentially be a 44-year project or 45.
No, I would think of it as
Does that-
a
does that-
40.
Does that reach over?
No, it's
think
it's
it's
wired.
It's a. This is good. I'll just hold it. I just feel strange having my back to folks. It would be expected to be an up to 40-year project, and so that initial 4 years includes all the diligence and studies as well as a construction period. The construction period is expected to be less than 1 year. So.
Right, so I could trim a couple years off the end of this, and the total revenues wouldn't be quite as high unless you do construction very fast.
Well, no, the construction would be incremental to this. So this graph is showing the operating life of 40 years for the project.
Okay.
It's showing the primary term and the 3 renewal terms. Any sort of construction period would be in addition to.
And the 3 renewal periods are when the revenue really gets the highest. You answered my question about a bond, awesome. And I'm assuming that in the decommissioning, in the plan that you put forward, the decommissioning will be put in as far as when you're reseeding, what you're doing, those will get into detailed conservation questions.
We would expect that the permit would outline requirements such as when does it need to be removed. It will, all of that will be outlined further in the permit.
Okay. And I just want to put on the record that the Conservation Commission didn't support this prior to town warrant because we don't understand cutting trees for solar. We totally support solar, but if we can put them in a place that already has an open sand pit or open property, that's the most ideal, and that's the best practice. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ritchie?
Thank you. Rodney Ritchie, Ball Hill Road. Certainly appreciate you gentlemen coming tonight to brief us on this. I was hopeful to the board that there would be a little more notice and more opportunity for people to be involved in this discussion. I realize the town vote was yes, go ahead. but I'm not sure that it's best to do something that you're authorized to do if it's not really something that people understand. And this is hard to understand. Now, from the money standpoint, $3.5 million over 25 years, my calculation says that's about $140,000 a year. Is that about right?
About, I think we were,
Okay.
sorry, around 50.
We came by a good backhoe for $140,000. So I'm wondering, are we getting the MSRP here? Has there been a discussion at that level by the board with these gentlemen to say, wait a minute, and then if you only need 30 acres, why go through all this lease situation? Make us an offer for 30 acres and buy it. You want to give me an answer?
So there were a couple of questions in there. One, actually starting at the last one in terms of why not buying it. Part of that is a function of the history. Frankly, typically would prefer to buy the land rather than to lease it. But this process began in the context of the whole 120 acres. And as we found ways to move the project away from the town land, it's kind of a balance of expectations that were set in the beginning and where we ended up. And so this was kind of the compromise approach that we found. And frankly, I also don't know that there was any interest from the town itself regarding the sale of just the 30 acres. But this seemed like a way that would meet the revenue requirements that we were talking about in the beginning when we first started discussing the project, while also reducing the footprint on the town land and maintaining a greater ability for the town to use the parcel as it saw fit.
Okay, I think.
Can I respond to part of Rodney's question?
You all set, Mike?
What's that? Oh, okay.
Go ahead.
I guess to go back to part of your question, Rodney, I'm going to be honest with you as a selectman. I actually didn't find out until the end of last week that the numbers have changed on the acreage. I'm also going to say, as a selectman, I didn't know we were coming here tonight for an approval. My thing, I would have put right out there saying, for a 40-year venture, I understand, Mark, you've put a lot of time into this, and I thank you for that. But when it really comes down to it, I think the citizens need to be involved in it. After February of next year, you won't be here, but the residents still will. So I personally feel that there's a lot of, I think public input, we have to remember as a board that the voters voted to approve it. It's the selectmen's job to carry out something that is done responsibly and in the best interest of the taxpayers. I think that it's something that still needs to be looked at more. And I think Rodney raises a good point as far as on public discussion about it. This is the first time it's been brought to the public's eyes of this.
Okay.
Um,
Question?
Yes, well, one other point or two. 16 megawatts. We don't usually think about megawatts. We pay our bills in kilowatt hours. And then you got to convert, et cetera, et cetera. But my attempt at doing that says this is 16,000 kilowatts. Is that right? Okay. 16,000 kilowatts times 24 hours is 384,000 kilowatt hours. Is that right?
Well, the 24 hours doesn't really relate to solar, right?
Okay.
Would you like me to give you megawatt hour, like the annual production in kilowatt hours? Or
Give me the retail value of 16,000 kilowatts per day.
the retail value per day?
Yeah.
We don't get the retail value per day.
But I pay a retail value.
Okay, but I guess what's the link between that? So what happens with the project? So I'll give you the numbers and then you can back into it and think of it different ways. The project is going to sell. Let's say if we were selling the power into the market.
Right.
When you get your bill, there's one portion that's generation, and then there's one portion that's wires, and then there's a series of other charges. What this project relates to is that generation portion of the bill.
Right.
So the wire side, none of that revenue doesn't come into the project.
Understood.
Okay.
Okay, so the 20 cents per kilowatt hour, that is the average New Hampshire cost,
Mm.
okay, is then how much at the quote wholesale value? How much are you getting?
How much we get?
Yep.
It would be, well, we don't, that won't be set yet. So,
Okay, so we don't
So,
really
Rod-
know how much that is.
How much do you pay per kilowatt hour?
The average New Hampshire, from the
No.
tables I've seen, is
Okay.
20 cents.
So if we were able to work with them and aggregate this for town residents at a price lower than 20 cents, that's a benefit to the town, or to the residents.
It could be. I think that's something.
Because that's
to
what we
consider.
talked about
Yeah.
earlier.
Yeah. But I think that's an aspect that needs to be considered. These figures in the payments are very strange, like 119,510. Why not 120,000?
It was because the payment was initially based on a per acre basis, and it's 119.62 acres is the totality of the town land.
Okay.
Although we're going to be leasing less of the acreage, we actually flattened the payments so that it were as though we were still leasing the entirety of the acreage. We were going to pay in that amount while actually leasing it, a much substantially smaller portion.
Okay. Just one other point on the money. In 1994, $100 then is $169 now. 25 years from now, I don't quite see the payment increase matching the inflation that I would anticipate.
fair question. And the reason for that is that the initial lease rate is typically far higher than what the land would be leased for alternative uses. So it's starting at a higher beginning point, and so over time they may catch up. But a big part of these projects is trying to create as much certainty as there is, and that's really how they get built, is that we try and identify each of the costs that can be fixed over a long period of time, and ideally get a kind of a matching agreement to sell the power over the same period of time. And I'm happy to sit down and talk more about it, but the idea is to start at a higher number and go from there. But we do recognize there is uncertainty about the future.
No, not in that inflation will be there, and we'll have to pay taxes. And a lot of us won't be around in 40 years to see whether this works out or not. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, my name's Scott Kimball, I wrote, I want to pick up on that higher lease payment.
Sure.
Because whatever, I haven't read a lot online, there's not a lot to read, but there's a project in Monticello, right outside of Minneapolis. About 14,000 people live in that town, they built a solar farm. Their Public Utilities Commission estimated the equivalent taxes received from a solar farm is about 5 to 12% than other types of development. Townhouses, light industrial. So, I mean, are we settling for short money here? I mean, to the use of that land? I mean, 40 years is a long time, and that's a long time to invest and to find out that, wait a second, we got some opportunity loss here. So, has that been looked at?
I think probably the moment we get the first payment will be more than we've had in the last 20 years off that property.
I understand that. I mean, it needs infrastructure out there if we want to develop it, so it does, we're grabbing at the money, but the other thing is when I read the master plan for the Bronx development, jobs were one of the big things. Developing industry out there that attracts jobs, high-paying jobs. This solar farm doesn't produce any jobs. Once it's in, that's it. It's static. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't improve the land other than just provide us rent. So in the long term, we're stuck with this lock-in, and we don't get to use the land for anything else. Does it impede any other development around there? Wherever you're going to situate that, is that going to impede any other development that may be produced around it?
If you look at the map that they brought in and displayed today, the acres used for the solar project are at the back end of our land, the town land. The front part of the project, closer to Perry Road and the service road, are still available for commercial development. And that $3.5 million over 25 years and $6.3 million over 40 is now, but it's on 30 acres. I wish I owned it. I'd take this deal in a heartbeat.
Have you ever considered buying it?
Love to. Wish I had.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Scott. Anyone else?
Good evening. Suzanne Fournier, Coordinator, Bronx Environmental Citizens. I live at 9 Woodward Drive in Milford. Okay, so to follow up on a few things that were said, let's see, irrevocable for 40 years, that really is something to think about. Before you sign, I think you should be, this board, the town, and I believe in public discussion, I think we should have more of that. The town needs to be 100% sure you're going to go into something that's irrevocable for 40 years potentially, unless there's a default where either party can back out if there's a default from the other party. But other than that, you need to be 100% sure you're happy with these terms, that these terms are all right. So just a couple things came to mind about being sure. And one of the things that might give you some surety one way or another would be to wait for the Supreme Court decision in a case going on right now where the answer will give information about the Department of Environmental Services where you are going to be applying for an alteration of terrain permit, correct? Yes, there's going to be an alteration of terrain permit. So the Supreme Court is deciding a case right now that will, in effect, will inform how DES handles issues of endangered wildlife. They're on site, they're not mentioned anywhere in the paperwork. You mentioned environmental, meaning hazardous waste and all of that, but endangered species don't show, wildlife species don't show up in any of your writings that I've read.
So review of species, and that's part of the permitting process, that there will be on-site studies, and to the extent that they're identified, then there are certain measures, either it's staying away from an area, or it could be having a monitor on site while construction is taking place to make sure that the species are not affected. That's a normal part of any development process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, on the private land you're talking about, the private land that's a part of this project, there's a dead spotted turtle already. Spotted turtle's a state of New Hampshire.
Ms. Fournier,
Yes?
excuse me for interrupting, but could you please put your comments in the form of questions to the gentleman as opposed to
Oh,
narratives?
you want them all as questions? They all
Well,
have to be
that's what the
questions?
purpose of this is to ask them questions about the lease
Phrase
in
this question.
particular.
Yes. Well, Mr. Kaplan was just explaining, you're explaining about how you're going to be getting information about the endangered species. There's also information being formed, assessed right now in a 3-year study by the New Hampshire Fish and Game Department. Okay, they're in the 2nd year of that study. Why not wait for the 3rd year? Why not wait for a report from the New Hampshire Fish and Game, Non-Game, and Endangered Wildlife Program to come up with their results of their study that's going on not just in the town land, the Brock's land, the whole 270 acres, but also that private land that I'm going to talk about in a minute. So why not wait for that? So the question is not really for them, it's really for the board. Why not wait the year? And the first part I was saying, why not wait wait until there's a decision from the Supreme Court, but from DES. That decision will be in either a few weeks, and it could be up to 3 months.
Or a few years.
No, Supreme Court decision, they only have...
The voters, the answer is that the voters voted this year to give the board the authority to go ahead and go into an agreement.
Do you think they voted that they want you to be ignorant of very important information? I don't think that's... And that's what you would get if you heard from the public at a decent meeting with decent notice, has been noted already. Okay, do you want... There's ignorance going on here. You're not waiting for Supreme Court decision. You're not waiting for the 3-year study. You're not calling Fish and Game to see if they have an interim report. There's already a lot of information, and that's where the question is, does it concern you that there's already a dead state-listed species, the spotted turtle, dead on that private landowner's property because he's also using it for the haul road to his gravel operation?
I think your comment is offensive to those who have been involved.
Don't be offended.
The 3 or 4 attorneys that have been involved in this for months, to say that they're ignorant about this. We have brought in, we have brought in attorneys that specialize in this type of thing.
And do they specialize in endangered wildlife species? This is an ecological gem, this property. Do you not recall that this is an ecological gem?
I don't think that's the point of what's
Are you
going
going to
on
argue with
right
me?
here.
It's not the point of what's going on?
That is not the point. They are going to have to go through permitting processes, and they will deal with that issue at the time.
And you're going through an evaluation of a contract
We're
for
going
40
through a lease,
years,
and if you have something to say
irrevocable.
about the lease specifically and the
Exactly.
terms, then say that.
Gary, I think this is, you need to regain.
Okay.
Selectman I don't appreciate her comment because this is about the lease.
Likewise.
You're getting it, I'm going to the word irrevocable. Irrevocable means you can't do anything further about it. It's all done. It's like an irrevocable marriage.
The board is well aware of that.
What is it? The what? Who was for everyone?
Board is well aware of that.
Good. Well, this is the seriousness of this decision. And I've heard comments earlier about, not rushing into anything. It's going to be a 40-year event. Okay? So I'm making comments to the board and questions to the gentleman, if that's okay, I mean, why aren't you allowing public comment? Please have another session. But okay, those are two things you really need. Your ignorance it's not an insult. It just means you don't have the information, ignorant of the information. You're not waiting for information, key information. The Supreme Court decision has to do with DES, alteration of terrain permits, and the way they will handle endangered species when you would go ahead and make your applications. The town has an interest in the success of your application. So, you're going to have more information when that decision comes out. And it'll be out within 3 months.
Suzanne, you make it sound like we're not doing anything out there about this wildlife or whatever they have it. We have Fish and Game out there every day. When we have special things going on, Fish and Game come out and approve it prior to anything happening out there. And while it's happening, Fish and Game is out there looking for potential issues. On top of wildlife scientists hired by our engineers and people working out there, I was out there when we were drilling wells for the...
That's what you're referring to, the wells. That's
Watching
right.
for turtles and snakes and whatnot.
They're
So
the
don't make it
experts, yeah.
sound like we're not doing anything.
Right.
Because we are.
I'm glad you did it with the
Could you
regarding
please-
the water drilling.
Could you
Yes.
please continue your questioning to the gentleman?
Yes. And let's see. What are you doing? My questions have to do with what are you doing to prepare yourselves fully with knowledge for this contract that you're considering jumping into tonight.
We have been briefed by our legal counsel.
Okay, and I'm going to respond to that they are not
I'm
endangered
not asking you
species.
to respond. I'm asking if you have any
I'm giving
questions.
public comment. Okay, so I do have questions. Yes, the lease premises bothers me as well. You've heard this from a speaker or two. It bothers me that, let me go back. Let me preface it. In your document, you refer to non-required areas. So they're, but you're leasing, in the documentation, you're leasing almost 120 acres.
No,
You're not going to lease 120 acres.
correct.
But they're listed, they're named, all these lots are named in the document.
Right, and then it says that prior to commencement of construction, there will be a survey that will define the acres that will be included, and then the acres that are not included would be released from it.
Excluded at that time. Okay, so you're talking 3 to 4 years.
Well, and then it also references a preliminary layout and saying that it's going to be substantially in the form of the preliminary layout.
Okay, so, yeah, but you're talking 3 to 4 years, but you already know, if we look at your drawing, I wish you would put it back up as small as it is.
Sure.
And, a poster would have been nice as well. No, I've seen it. I got it memorized. All the lots, how the Brock's land is tall. There's that brown neck. I call that the neck. Okay, it's in brown. You have no interest. We know now you're not using 5 or 6 of the 8 lots. You've already shown us. We already know this today. Why pretend, why pretend like it'll take 3 to 4 years to decide which lots you won't need? And there's one lot that's a temporary during construction, it's just a landing zone kind of thing, a construction setup. It won't be used when you're operational. It's going to be gone. So you don't really need that long term beyond construction. That's kind of sees. And it's only a portion of that lot number 11. It's only a portion of it that you need. The rest of it you don't need. But all of these lots, all these 8 lots here are listed. So why are they all listed? Waiting 3 to 4 years when you show us, does this diagram here mean anything? If it means something, then you're showing us that you don't need 5 or 6, at least 5 of these lots you don't even need at this point in time.
So the
True.
question is, why not carve it out earlier? Is that the?
That's right. If you don't need those lots, why are you even looking at them? If a business wanted to move into this area that Mr. Bender said, oh, it's way over there, it's way down, away from business area. If a business wanted to build on the 30 acres that interest you, right, they wouldn't rent 120 acres. They'd say, I'm going to those 30 acres. That's the logic of it. I don't understand why all those other lots are in there at this point when you know you don't even need them at this point. Okay, I'm raising the question, and you tried to answer there. Okay, so last March, the voters had a vote. What? Can I move on to the next question? Okay. So we were all there, many of us were there in March for the vote, or the deliberative session, and then following the vote. And as you said earlier, the earlier version of this was 100%, the project was 100% on the town's land. Now, by my calculations of your grids, it's 35% on the town, 65% on the private landowners. Approximately 5 to 6 megawatts on our land, and the 10 or so on the private land. Okay, that's rough because you didn't give us any figures, but you gave us a diagram and it kind of can estimate the area there. Okay, so town voters voted for 100%. You told the voters a certain thing, and now what the voters are getting, and many people are for solar on this property. They love the environment. They love Brox, and they'd look at me and say, we love Brox, but solar is so good for the planet. That's what some people's arguments were. So, they had that argument, and now they're not getting their solar on this land. Okay, so 35%, but 65% is on the private land. So here's my question. Okay. Now that it's a public-private project, what does the board know about the private project portion, the portion that's private? What does this board know? How might it affect this contract? Isn't there a second contract with the private landowner? You mentioned the pilot crosses over. You mentioned that. Did I understand that correctly? You mentioned that the pilot will be assessed, if there is a pilot, that it would be assessed on the private land as well as the town land, so there's really not a loss in pilot value. You're saying land will all be assessed for pilot, that even though it's not all public land, that private land still has value, so that one would still have provide some income. So you yourselves mentioned the private funds coming from the pilot or property taxes, as Attorney Drescher talks about, that there should be property taxes in your first 3 years under the option, or 4th year under the option. And I think that is still something to be resolved, by the way. I heard Attorney Drescher say you need to be paying taxes. So my question is, what does this board know about that private contract? What if something goes wrong with that private contract? Has it been signed? Are they somewhere signing it tonight? It's a joint project. So can you give us some clarification about this public-private project?
I guess one piece of context that I would add is that the entire project would all be going before the town for the permit approval. It wouldn't be a separate permit sought there, so there would be kind of a holistic view of the entire project, as well as the relevant town boards and groups having approval on that. The pilot again would be looking at it as the entire project. Mm-hmm. So there were a lot of thoughts that you were expressing, so I was trying to be responsive.
Okay.
Let me know if there's
So
something
from a
missing.
permitting standpoint, that's correct. But this board is not going to be involved in the lease of the private property. That's
Right,
not
what does that mean,
our.
not be involved? What do you mean by not be involved in the lease of the?
It's a lease on private property. That's not our concern.
Right. Isn't it the town's concern that there's a contract I'm going to assume, you have to correct me if it's incorrect, a contract with a private landowner. It can, Is there going to be a contract with the private landowner about the installation on that private landowner's property? The lease, are they going to have a lease agreement?
Agreement with that private landowner?
Yes. Are you having one? You haven't presented that to this board.
Well, that's a private.
Oh, my
that's a
God,
private landowner.
65, we're talking about a project.
You gotta put
Okay.
into this.
Number one,
let me
we are responsible for town property. Whatever they do on the private property, it's their arrangement with the private landowner.
Okay.
We don't have control over that. We control the
That's
30
correct.
acres that they're looking at.
That's correct. I do understand that, Chairman Daniels. Okay. My question is, this is one project, and Mr. Kaplan has just explained it's one project. One project is going to go to the boards. One project, but two aspects, a private and a public. What happens if the private portion of this project runs into its own troubles? And when I ask about the troubles, for example, I'm mentioning the spotted turtle that died on that private landowner's land. That may be a particular problem to that portion of the project. There may be other potential issues with that private landowner's portion of the project. It's one project. And I don't understand why this board would want to be blind as to what's going on with 65% of the project, the private. You're only concerned about your 35% for the public. It used to be 100%, so this is all brand new to the townspeople. Okay, it used to be 100%. We knew what we were getting into. I didn't vote for it. I opposed it. Budget Advisory Committee opposed it. Conservation Commission opposed it. Brock's Environmental Citizens opposed it. Okay, but it got voted in, and it was 100% on the town property. Okay, something to think about. And then I do have a question about the vernal pools. Now, you did put some nice colors identifying a few of the vernal pools. Do you consider that the vernal pool study is finished? Will there be more vernal pool study?
It is complete.
The vernal pool study is complete. Will you be providing the data to the town?
Yes, that would be part of the permitting application.
Okay. So what if I tell you that there are documented vernal pools in addition to the ones that you have on there? Very important one. Coming down, it's currently a road. It's just off the road going down to the power line. Very important vernal pools where we saw the first Blandings turtle. That's the state endangered Blandings turtle living in that pool. Egg masses everywhere in that pool. Just because you didn't find egg masses this spring, I didn't find egg masses in some of the pools I looked at too. where
Ms.
I've seen
Fournier,
them-
would you please ask your question?
Yes, the question is that will they relook at the vernal pools? I'm giving them information that they need to relook. So will they relook at the vernal pools as part of their wetland delineation? Because they missed them. They missed some. And the state has records of most of them. Most of these vernal pools have been documented and sent to the state, so they're there. Will you have, and you do have your wetland TRC person here for a reason.
I'm sorry. Well, I believe, I'm sorry. May I go or?
No, go ahead.
Okay. I believe that a review of the existing records is actually a part of the process, so all of that information will be considered.
It will be.
And I can be,
yeah.
sorry, Vicky, correct me if I'm stating this inelegantly.
I can't actually see the graphic.
Use the microphone, please.
None of us can.
I think
So-
the question was whether the vernal pool analysis prior to yours, how is something like that?
We did look at a part of the Brock's Industrial Park development. They had a map that had vernal pools on it. We looked at all those vernal pools. We documented a total of 15 vernal pools. I can't quite see on that graphic. Sorry.
Right here.
It's
I don't know if that helps
my
you.
eyes, but
I don't know they'll be able to go vernal pool.
I think we need to get into
right.
that.
So it was a very thorough, careful review. We actually made 2 visits this spring. And the whole
talking
project
about
will go through a permitting process where there may be additional review of information. We also will be out there delineating wetlands. As I say, we did 2 vernal pool surveys this spring.
Is it safe to say that this is all part of the permitting process?
Yes.
Okay, so please concentrate on
I need an
the
answer to-
lease.
She's giving an answer. I need to point, I want a clarification. Did you say you identified 15 vernal pools? They're not on.
The point is out of order.
Was that?
The question was,
about-
will these be looked at again?
right.
The answer was that yes, it's part of the permitting process.
Can we
Regardless of how many pools there are or not out there right now, it's going to be looked at again as part of the permitting process.
So now my question is, why aren't all those 15 pools in the industrial area noted on?
Mr. Chairman, and I think the point needs to be made here that everything they're saying makes sense, but it doesn't belong in this meeting, and it doesn't belong on that document. It's a very preliminary document, and what these folks are going to be in for in the months and months that this project is going to be wending its way before the planning board with Conservation Commission recommendations and involvement, it will make what we've done with this document pale in significance. I mean, that's a big process. All of those issues are exactly what they get into in the planning board in minute detail, and their engineers will be put to the test because we have a very capable and sophisticated planning board.
Okay.
Thank you, Attorney Joshua.
So let me ask a question on that is, so why are you signing this prior to getting all of that review? I'm asking
Because this is the first step.
No one can do any of those steps prior to having any kind of site control, because we'll be investing hundreds of thousands of dollars in these studies, and no one does that unless they have some kind of rights that if there is a subsequent approval, they would actually be able to build something.
Okay, but didn't you already do your vernal pool study? That costs money. You did that ahead of time because of the
We did.
timing?
Yes.
So you did. So you spent some money ahead of time.
Yeah, we did spend some money ahead of time because part of this was trying to come up with the best footprint that we could for the town.
Okay. All right. Well, I was, anyway, disappointed that environmental and endangered species, vernal pool, nothing was mentioned in the contract as being important. One last question. You referred to the documents, and as you were just saying about the vernal pool study, that they become the property of the town when and if this something funny about it. It says that we get them only if they're exclusive to the town. Now we know that the private landowner will have studies done on that land as well. You will be doing those studies. So why can't you guarantee you'll separate those reports so that we can get the reports on about our town land?
So I guess first I'd back up and give the context that given that the permit application would be for it in its entirety, what we're talking about now is if early on in the process it was determined that it didn't make sense to develop anything there. And so to the extent that there's a kind of a natural cleaving of the public and private land, and we can do that, we would, but we don't want to provide ahead of any kind of permitting process information on a private landowner's property.
Right. And I wasn't, let me clarify what I was saying. I wasn't asking for the private landowner's property, for example, the vernal pools and all that. I wasn't asking for that, about that. I'm saying when you develop information about the town's property, will you give those documents to the town? In this one of the items, the stipulation, it says you will give it only if it's separate for the town.
Yes, we'll provide the town information.
The what?
Yes. Yes.
That yes, he will give it even if it's not separate from the private landowner?
I
In
said
other
that
words, if you did a vernal pool study that covered all of them, but you don't want to separate them out into public and private, would we not get the?
We can provide.
But will you? I'm sorry.
I already said yes.
Okay, good. Thank you. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Putnam?
approve the lease.
Motion by Mr. Putnam to approve the lease. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Selectman Duziak. Any further discussion among the board?
I'd like to just reiterate my comment as far as I still think that for the short discussion period that we've had with the public, I feel on a 40-year lease, I feel before we approve it, I feel that there should be more discussion with the public.
Thank you. Further discussion?
I just feel like the voters did approve a solar project on Brock's. This item was on the agenda. I think that voters who were interested in coming here to discuss it had the opportunity.
Can I reply to that?
You may comment.
I may comment to that, I guess. As far as for being just released in the agenda on Friday afternoon, I actually don't feel that that was sufficient time to actually notify the public to attend the meeting.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, nay.
Nay.
The ayes have it 4-1, and the motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much. Being recessed 5 minutes.
Certainly.
Good idea.
Our next appointment is regarding the 2018 audit. Jared Vartanian?
Yep. I'm sure that everybody wants to follow up the Flex Solar Lease issue with an audit, but here I am, and so my name's Jared Vartanian. I'm an engagement partner with Vashon Kluke Company out of Manchester. We're a governmental and not-for-profit, primarily audit firm out of Manchester. And I've been the engagement partner that has overseen the town's audit the last several years. What I've done is I've prepared essentially, it's been a while since I've never come out personally and done anything to cover the audit. I've summarized each of the different documents we've given you and tried to highlight some of the key items I found from the financial statements to present. I have my financial statements. I'll answer any questions that the board does have on them. And I typically like to start off with the separate handouts that were given to the board. One of the first is, it's called the governance communication. It would be it's no heading, and it's the full page, there's no signature. And what that is the governance communication is a required communication directly to the board and management, summarizing the overall audit process for the year. Some of the key items from the current year audit are as follows. During the year, the town adopted and implemented GASB Statement 75, accounting and financial reporting for post-employment benefits other than pensions. GASB Statement 75 supersedes GASB Statement 45. Significant differences affecting the town include reporting its single employer OPEB plan, which is the implicit liability that's created in all New Hampshire municipalities because state law requires you to allow retirees to stay on the plan with current. You have to give a pooled rate. If you didn't have to give a pool rate, you wouldn't have this liability, but because you do and it's state law, it generates an actuarially determined liability that in theory you never pay. So you've picked up a liability that essentially just keeps coming back year after year. That's the standard. There's also an additional portion of this standard where you're going to have to now required to report the proportionate share of the New Hampshire retirement system's unfunded medical subsidy. While this is similar to how the pension liability is recorded under GASB 68, while the plan is closed to new entrants, as I'm sure the board is aware, the New Hampshire retirement system is significantly underfunded. New governmental accounting rules have required that for these underfunded plans, that municipalities be given a proportional share. Your share is less than 1%. However, the liability under the state's pension program is so great that it ends up generating quite a significant liability. That information is provided through an actuarial report that is done by actuaries and also audited, and it's available on the New Hampshire Retirement Systems website. And it is referenced in the notes as well. Management and finance personnel were extremely cooperative and more timely throughout the process in the current year. And then the last significant item would be audit adjustments were primarily limited to trustees of trust funds accounts being converted from the Form MS-9, which is reported for the state. It's a cost-based document. For modified accrual purposes, we have to make adjustments to get them to fair market value. So for a town your size, it's probably one of the most important things I'll communicate. To not have, you know, a laundry list of adjusting audit entries is excellent. It means the information, one of the most important things is you want to know is the information you're getting from your finance staff enables the board to make decisions. You have no idea how often boards get information until auditors come in. You're making decisions on what you think the numbers are, and they change significantly. I can tell you that comfortably that is not the case here. You know, where you may question maybe in the past some of the timeliness, the information, a lot of it is because it has been adjusted to the penny, you know, and it's definitely, you know, we do approximately 75 to over 100 municipal audits a year. So to tell you, you're in the upper echelon that way as far as the status of your books when we come in to do the audit, which is, you know, with a lot of the complexities is impressive.
You're talking about on the back page, there's 4 entries?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. And so normally there'd be, you know, in honest, there's just a laundry list are very significant. The trustees' entries are almost a technicality too, in that they're not handled internally by the board. They're handled by elected trustees. They fill out a form that matches the state's requirements, which don't really match GAAP reporting. So we're just really giving adjustments to bring it up to fair value, you know. And so they're pretty much limited to those types of entries is impressive.
Jared, if I might, I just wanted to let Selectman Dargy know that the GASB 45 implementation was one of the things that you wanted me to spearhead when we first got
Yes,
here. So
exactly.
That's one of the main reasons we now have a clean audit, is we were able to get that actuarial done. Jared and his folks did the review of the actuarial, and this is what you have before you.
My understanding is that full review is done every 2 years?
For the actuarial evaluation? Yes,
Is
correct.
that correct? No,
Yes.
because we just did it for the first time.
Yeah.
Do we get 2 years? Do we have to do it again?
They have to run some reports. I mean, I'm not an actuary, so
Yeah.
that gets into, I believe, they do one valuation, and then they roll forward. They put in like something that made the actuaries have to do a little more work in 75, where they said, if you're not funding it and you don't have a bond rate and you have an implicit liability, so you wouldn't fund it, then you need to use a municipal bond rate annually. So they can't give you the 2-year report necessarily because they don't know what the bond rate's going to be the next year. But it should be a roll forward of that information using the new discount rate.
I guess we're going to be putting our budget together for next year. Should we put in money to fund another review or not?
Yeah, I can answer that for you. The contract that was executed before I got here was for an every other year, a full and then a roll forward. So for example, I think this year was around $3,500 from the actuarial, and next year was going to be something less than that, around the $2,000 range. But there still would be a financial impact each year to keep this current.
I was just wondering if the first year that we're doing it, if you have to do it extra. It sounds like it's not.
No.
No, and it depends on who you get for an actuary. Right. There are a few that are out there that are giving 2-year reports. I mean, it all depends on the actuary, to be honest.
So we presume that's an expense the board wants to continue?
Absolutely.
There's some pros and cons to that. So as Jared pointed out, because we don't go to the open market for our bonding, we're part of the bond. We can go through the bond bank. This is not actually something that's required. We're not going to fund the liability that our auditors have determined that we're responsible for. That's something that will never be funded. So it's really up to the board to decide whether.
Gets us a clean audit.
It gets us a clean audit.
Yeah, I was just going to bring that up.
Yep.
We got bad audits that kind of you couldn't really tell how bad things were because you said it was bad. So we want to get a clean audit so that you know it's clean.
And that's a difficulty is when there's no study done. We can't even assess the scope of whether or not we could say it's qualified or we have to give an adverse if it's not done. Now we would know the scope is material. So yes, if you stop getting it done, it would go back to an adverse opinion because now that it's done, we know it is material, being what it was, I think, maybe $2 or $3 million. So, you know the scope. So, and what it's worth, it's one of those things across, most of the schools do it because they tend to have more budget flexibility, to be frank. Not all the towns we have do it. A lot of the bigger cities do it. It's a decision of the board on whether or not, you're comfortable with that, whether you guys get a rating or whatnot, from any of the investment companies. I can't speak to that. I can just tell you that it results in a clean audit opinion.
From my perspective, if we're gonna get an adverse audit, I mean, what's the point of doing an audit if it comes out adverse?
Well, the governments are a little complex in that. You can receive clean and adverse because there's multiple reporting units. So you'd be receiving a adverse opinion for if you were elected not to follow up with it. With your governmental activities, which is like your full accrual basis, town funds. At this point, you'd also, for your business type activities, because it is material, most likely for your water and sewer as well. But you could technically still have a clean opinion on your general fund, and then the aggregate remaining, meaning your RAC, your conservation, and your other funds. So it's one of those that really, it depends on the board. I could tell you that no one funds it, but a lot of places comply with it because they want the clean opinion.
Another question.
Follow up?
On the last page, there's 4 correcting entries. 3 are the ones you talked about, are going to mark-to-market basic. But there's one on the ambulance accounts receivable. Do you have any comments on that one?
Yep, so that one, I didn't really highlight that because it was a zero effect entry. Basically, the town, the zero effect on your net income, essentially, or your change in fund balance, because the town has switched over collections, how they collected ambulance receivables. Once you changed over, there's an old balance that hasn't been paid in years that's just sitting there. You have a receivable that's not getting collected, that no one's really monitoring. There was an allowance for the full amount, so we made, it was suggested that you might as well take off, and then anything that comes in is just miscellaneous revenue that you get from it, because you're not really getting much from it. So there's no effect on the bottom line from that. It was a receivable that was fully allowed for through a reserve for allowance.
It was basically just a cleanup bookkeeping
just zero
entry.
it out.
It just zeroed each other out. Yeah.
Okay.
Which doesn't, it doesn't mean you can't collect on it, it just means it'll go to miscellaneous. Because at this point, if you have an allowance anyway, it would still go to the same place, because it's not in there as a receivable.
One last question. So this is a clean audit. Where is the language that says everything's good?
Okay, well, can I get to the other?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, all right.
Sorry.
So the next one I'll cover is the report on internal control. It's separately titled as well.
Okay.
That's the single sheet that I handed out to you, gentlemen.
So as part of the audit process,
Sorry,
we
Laura.
examined the town's internal controls over the financial reporting process, which includes cash disbursements, receipts, and payroll, and we're pleased to report there were no deficiencies or findings as a result of our testing or walkthrough procedures. In the current year, we performed walkthroughs and transaction testing over all significant audit areas. We did not note any deviations in our testing procedures. We also reviewed all credit card disbursements because we believe it to be a high-risk audit area for municipalities. The audit process years ago changed from beat up the balance sheet essentially to a risk-based approach. Because we do so many municipalities, we find things where we see trends where there tends to be issues in towns. One of them is credit cards. So we hammered credit hard. We look at every credit card transaction the town made. While there was no findings or weaknesses or deficiencies, we did issue a separate management letter over credit cards, which it doesn't rise to the level of a material weakness or deficiency, but just an area where you could maybe strengthen or maybe make some improvements. We noted several instances of hundreds of transactions of untimely remittance or lack of a supporting documentation submitted by the department to the finance office, which in turn led to several credit card payments being late. The town did not pay any interest on those charges, but because we noticed this was happening, we just wanted to put it in a letter and make everybody aware that this was what's going on. Overall, to have several out of several hundred is not near a big deal. None of the purchases were questionable either. It was more so just a matter of record keeping, best practice. And so, with that, I'll get to the financial statements. Most important part is the opinion. It leads the financial statements. The town received an unmodified opinion for all of its reporting units, which is the highest level of opinion that can be achieved. It's the first time in the last 10 years that you've received unmodified opinions for all its reporting units, and it was due to the implementation and adherence to GASB Statement 75, as we discussed previously. I've also now provided highlights from the financials, and take questions if anybody has. These are just some of the key things from a summary level that I would pick up and normally present to a town. I think the board would want to know. Total current assets decreased from the prior year by roughly $1.85 million. This was primarily due to spending on capital outlays prior to authorized bonding proceeds being received. We noted in Note 17, subsequent events, that numerous pieces of debt, which were issued in 2019. This included authorizations for 17-18, along with 2019 new issuances. This affected the Capital Projects Fund, which reported a deficit balance at the end of 2018. This will be replenished once the issuances are made in 19. So as far as I can see, that they'll be fully replenished. So it's more so of you're borrowing from the general fund to make these capital outlays until you take out the debt. Whether that was intentional or not, it's a strategy some towns like to use because they feel like if we take out $5 billion, we know we're going to spend $5 million. Some like to try to spend it, then borrow, but you just have to, for cash flows, obviously you want to monitor that when you're going to make big payments to the school and such, so.
I guess just for clarification, would that be where the town of Milford didn't get the bonds prior years, or where was that going?
It was authorized, and then they didn't get issued until 19. So it included, there's a whole list of them in Note 17.
Authorized there and then taken out there.
Is there a reason in the 18 audit you guys didn't catch, or the audit a year ago, you guys didn't catch that then?
What do you mean? That has, I guess there's no bearing for us whether or not, so we just audit it and report on it. Whether or not the town authorizes, issues the debt, it's authorized, we report that it was authorized, but whether or not it's issued is up to the town, how it's issued. I do believe there was a note. It started in the previous year. I think there was a note, because I think when I had met with Mark, you had discussed, there was a note in the previous year about the capital projects being in a deficit. However, this year, it's a major fund, so it's on the face of the financials, so it doesn't require to be presented because it's right in the face on page 3 of the report.
Okay. I guess I'm good with that now. I guess we can discuss that some other time. Okay. That's
Other questions?
So non-current assets increased by roughly $3 million from the prior year. This was due to capital asset additions and excessive depreciation and disposals. Significant additions included fire station upgrade and road improvements. Total current liabilities remained consistent with the prior year, with an increase of less than 0.1%, so it was almost identical. Long-term liabilities also remained consistent with the prior year. Current year reductions in general obligation debt were offset by the inclusion of the OPEB liability from GASB 75 of roughly $2.1 million. So liabilities remain stable. All these factors ended up affecting the town, and that net position, which represents town's equity on an accrual basis, increased from the prior year by roughly $1.7 million in governmental activities, and then $164,000 for business type activities. Business type activities being the water and sewer funds. On the governmental fund basis, the general fund ended with an unassigned fund balance of $2.6 million, which represents 5.6% of gross appropriations of the general fund. This includes school and county payments. This is within the town's target minimum between 5 and 15%. On a budgetary basis of accounting, which is what's used for reporting to the New Hampshire Department of Revenue when you're setting your tax rate. The number remained in a more solid position. It ended the year with an unassigned fund balance of $3.9 million, which was roughly 8.4% of your gross appropriations, which also is within your target and includes the appropriations of the school and county. New standards applicable in 2019. Town will be required to implement GASB Statement 84, fiduciary activities for the year ended December 31st, 2019. The objective of GASB Statement 84 is to improve guidance and financial reporting of fiduciary activities. These are monies held in a fiduciary capacity by the town that don't support the town's programs. Good news is the effects will really be minimal and really won't affect the town. So there'll be ones in the future that will, but nothing next year that would affect the town significantly. And with that, I'll take any questions, detailed.
Is there a cost to doing GASB 84? Or is that just part of things that happen?
No, not really. I mean, there's not like, it's not like 75. There's no like, I can't attribute. I mean, we gain efficiencies in doing so many municipalities. So, I mean, with the size of your town, by the time we normally would come out, we've already done the notes, changes, or whatever several times over, to be honest. 75 is actual man hours and reviewing and reconciling and testing the plan, whereas there's very little lifting with 84, which is good.
When you do an audit, do you look at the same things every time, or does that change from time to time when you do the audits?
No, we don't. I mean, it's risk-based, and so it will depend on, we bring in your data, we'll go through, we're going to look at significant changes, we're going to look for exceptions, whatnot. We also rotate for unpredictability when we're going to do heavy testing in certain areas, so you know what I mean? We're always going to test significant in areas every year, but some years we're really going to, and it can be a burden on the financial staff. They probably don't like it, but, certain years, like for this year, we came in, we hammered, we'll hammer whatever, water sewer. It's like we're going to test, 40 to 60, items, individual items, and we're going to trace from inception to completion for it, which is a lot. And, we'll do that for payroll, disbursements. We do that on a rotating basis, just so that if the auditor knows what you're going to do every time, then they can prepare for it. So, to be frank.
That's what I was wondering, just see if audits ever get to the point of being complacent about things.
I don't think, the standards are ever changing. Not really. I mean, it's one of those things too. It's, we rotate who we have come out to. I probably spend a day or two maybe when I actually come out, but I'm more so, you'll see different people, we'll see different people, each time, just because everybody has a different perspective of how they will look at it.
Okay. Any further questions? Seeing none, thank you both very much.
Thank you, Jen, and ladies.
Thanks, Jerry. Yep.
Good evening, Paul.
Any comments from the public? We've had them all. Okay, the consent calendar. There's 3 items on the consent calendar. First is a request for acceptance and appropriation of unanticipated revenue under $10,000 under RSA 3195B. There are 2 items there. A $100 donation to support the Labor Day Parade from Tech Support, and a $109.05 donation to the Police Canine Special Purpose Fund from Vinterest Antiques and Flips, LLC. Secondly, we have a request for approval of 2 timber tax levies, map 54, lots 2 and 6, and a request for approval for Community Action Safe Teams, or Teens, or CAST, to host their annual Red Ribbon Week on the Oval. This is for drug awareness. Is there anything to be removed from the consent calendar? Seeing nothing, is there a motion to accept the consent calendar?
So moved.
Moved by Selectman Putnam.
Second.
Second by Selectman Duziak. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Ayes have it, motion carries. Mr. Bender.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A few items on town status. First is the dispatch RFQ. At our last meeting, the board authorized CTA to perform the analysis, but was looking for some clarification on a few items. So I have some clarification. CTA understands that Milford needs to determine if we are best served with our own dispatch radio system or a regional system. CTA will provide accurate budgetary cost estimates for each of these options. They understand that we will most likely need to use these cost estimates to support a 2020 warrant article. They projected that their estimates could be accurate within a 3 percentage point variance, and they provided some details, and I gave that information to the board in a separate document to support that projection. CTA is confident that the outcome from their Phase 1 scope of work will clearly and concisely provide answers for the elected officials to make good decisions for the citizens of Milford. CTA is committed to completing Phase 1 with the budgetary cost estimates by December 16th. Provided our on-site initialization meetings start on October 7th, and we are committed to work with them so that we can do that. The December 16th date is important because we still have work to do to prepare a warrant article or warrant articles for dispatch, and those would have to be presented to the public during the budget and bond hearing, which is January 13th. They have a local representative, Mark Cady. He'll be providing regular progress updates to us throughout the process on both Phase 1 and Phase 2. And Cheryl Giggets, their principal consultant, and Mark will be available to present the findings and recommendations to the Board of Selectmen. So that's just for informational purposes.
One question for you.
Yes.
You say to have it to present to the public on the January 13th budget and bond. Is there going to be any discussions with the public prior to that? Meaning, if we're going to get the results back in December or whatnot, are we going, what I don't want to have happen is another solar thing tonight.
You know, if their report is available December 16th, they'll be presenting to the board between, as soon as possible after that.
I guess whether it's at a board meeting or it's just an informational meeting, I guess I would like to see, for how much we've said to the public that we want them involved in it, I guess I feel I'd like to present it to them prior to budget and bond.
I think we will, go ahead.
That's the intent.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that's.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the purpose of the budget and bond, is so that they can ask questions about it too. So, I mean, if we get it posted as soon as we get it.
Right, but I guess I still feel whether it be an information, for how much discussion we've had, I just feel if there's an opportunity at a prior meeting, I guess I'd like to see it before that. That's all I'm getting at. I'm not trying to.
Okay.
Thank you.
Paving and line painting.
Sir, before you go to pay.
Mr. Ritchie.
Again, Rodney Ritchie. Now, there in number 1, you've said our own or a regional system. Now, will the CTA recommendation distinguish between a Milford-managed regional system and a multi-town regional system? That's not clear in that statement.
I think we'll wait to see their report.
I'm always leery of that, but you're running it, so.
Nope.
Okay. Now, I take it we have or are soon going to have a real contract in place with CTA. We have their proposal. You've turned that into a contract.
Working on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. How will CTA invoice us? Hours expended, deliverables provided, or on completion of phases, and what are the criteria for the completion of those phases?
Well, it's to be determined, but their pricing was based on 2 phases, and I'm sure they'll want some money up front for Phase 1, and the balance due on completion of Phase 1, and then we'll get into Phase 2.
And again, this is a comment, not another question, but I think it might provide what Mr. Labonte is requesting because I believe there are some deliverables in there. If there is some opportunity for a presentation, discussion of those, we have a local representative. I noticed in the proposal, Ms. Giggets offers video conferencing, et cetera, some possibility of hearing from people. And again, notification so others can be available to hear about it. Okay, thank you. Now, let me just be sure, and again, you're looking at it very closely. If I could just be sure with the question, the concept moving forward. On 16 December, you're getting cost estimates. That's the cost for equipment and installation and upgrade for what the consultant is recommending would solve what the consultant sees as Milford communication problems. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so that's what the cost estimate will be for. Then you've got 16 to 31 December, you're developing a warrant article. Is that correct?
Or later,
Okay.
as long as we have it done before the bond and budget.
Okay, so, all right, but 31 December, I believe we've got to declare an intent to stay or not stay with Milford Area Communication Center. And I have not heard a discussion. So my question is that the concept that you have in mind?
That is a date that we have to be cognizant of. And so we have a lot of work to do between the 16th and the 31st.
Okay, just want to make sure that we're all on the same wavelength regarding that. And so then, 1st to 13 January or whatever, get the warrant article done and dispatch plan, and then March we vote. Now that's again where I'm not sure we've looked at the flow chart all right. So my question is, what if the warrant article doesn't pass?
We have thought about that. And
me too.
One of the things that we need to talk about as a board is to whether we want a secondary warrant article on the warrant so that if one fails, the other might be a possibility.
Yeah, there is that possibility. I would certainly agree with you, Gary. On other issues, that has been a consideration, of course, and we know that can divide things and throw it all into a heck of a basket. So, yeah. But just wanted to see that and sort of get out to the public your concept and an idea of where we're going, how we're marching along, and what the possibilities are.
Well, I think, on the December 16th, if we say call that as a presentation.
Right.
I mean, it certainly is incumbent on us to make sure that we can educate people as much as possible, because if we're going to support a particular position, then we would want to make sure that they understand, answer any questions that they might have, and be prepared for a warrant article. I mean, that's probably going to drive whatever that warrant article is going to be.
Yes, it certainly would. And it should put you in a position with the what they come up with as to here's the recommendation and here's how long we get it done, as to whether there is a need to continue with the current operation longer. That, of course, continues to be an option. Yeah. Not maybe a good one, all things considered.
It's an option.
Yeah, just to be clear, though, December 16th, we're looking for two cost estimates. One is for a Milford system, and the other one is for a regional system. So it's important that we get both. How that regional system is structured, I didn't mean to be too flip it with my response to you.
No, not at all.
But I don't think that we want to point them in a direction to do their study as far as that regional system, whether it should be managed by the town of Milford or continue to be managed from MacBase. They should be able to do that analysis and come back to us with that recommendation.
No, I totally agree with you, Mr. Bender. Thank you very much. And I see it really because the way it's outlined there, it's sort of as two. I sort of see it as three, maybe one and then A, and then B has 1 and 2 below it.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, we agree. Thank you.
Thank you, Rodney.
Paving and line painting. So Water Utilities finished the work on Union Street last week or the week before. Our plan on paving is mid-October to mill and pave Nashua Street and reclaim and pave Union Street. So once we finish those paving projects, we can do the line painting on Nashua and Union Street. The other streets that we're planning to do line painting on are Elm South, West, Prospect, Savage, Witten, Mason, Osgood, Clinton, McGettigan, Amherst, and Mount Vernon streets. Our goal is to have those lines painted no later than the week of October 7th and maybe sooner. Now, so my question before you ask your question, are there any other roads that you would like us to line stripe?
I think probably we just need to follow whatever that center line document.
Well, but we don't paint all those every year.
Well,
Some of them are good and we don't repaint them.
I would leave that up to the DPW director.
These are all on that document, but this is not all of the roads on the document.
Right.
They're the ones we're planning to do this year.
As far as paving, weren't we going to do Garden Street and Cottage? I thought that was on the original list. I thought all the structures were already pulled out of there already.
It is. That was on the original list.
Yeah.
As far as I know, it's still the plan.
That's all I was going to get, is if
I'll
not,
check.
then we got to be putting some structures back.
Yeah.
Oh, they brought the equipment in a couple weeks ago to grind, but SUR had a couple things they weren't done with, so they moved it out, and SUR is finished up now.
I'll check those. I was focused on the main streets.
Will Union Street be paved before or after Pumpkin Festival?
After.
It's probably going to be after.
The sidewalks have been done.
It's mid-October.
Is there any way it can be reclaimed and graded prior to? At least if you're,
Prior
to
to
me,
Pumpkin
your
Festival.
liability on what you have for potholes on Union Street with that many thousand people coming into town, I believe would be leaving the town at risk.
Yeah, something should be done.
All right, I'll check. The last item I had is a decision from the board on some culverts. Our planned work using the bridge repair and/or replacement capital reserve funds for 2019 included $90,000 to replace a culvert on Joslin Road. But we have two failing culverts. One is on Armory Road and the other one is on Ball Hill Road. That probably need more attention than the one up on Joslin. Number one, because of the condition and also because of the traffic. Rick estimates that we could replace both of those culverts for somewhere between $80,000 to $90,000, so roughly the same amount that we had planned for Joslin. That includes all the materials, the pipe, stone for the road bed, head walls, etc., guardrail on just the Armory Road portion, excavation and installation of the pipe, and then paving. Work on Armory Road would require some daytime closure, probably for 3 to 5 days. Detours would be Melendi or Osgood and Union. Work on Ball Hill would require daytime closure for probably 2 to 3 days. But the detour is just on Annan Drive. That would just loop around that work where the culvert is. Selectmen have the authority to expend the capital reserve funds. So the question is, do you want to reallocate that from the Joslin Road project and do the Armory and Bald Hill projects?
Well, yeah, they feel it's the priorities and.
Isn't there a minimum on that, though?
Well,
$75,000?
Yeah, it was $75,000, but the warrant article was worded in a way that that I think the board had some flexibility, that it didn't have to be for an individual project, it could be culverts.
And who was it that determined these culverts were in worse shape?
Armory Road's been settling for years.
Oh,
They
yeah,
just
it's
actually
bad.
patched, the pipe, I believe, has compressed so much where they slid a smaller diameter pipe in and it just keeps restricting, I think,
Let
from
me
what
read
I've
the-
seen.
Yeah, let me read the warrant article. It was warrant article 24, where we renamed the bridge capital reserve fund. Shall the town vote to rename the bridge capital replacement reserve fund to Bridge Repair and/or Replacement Capital Reserve Fund, and to include culverts greater than $75,000 replacement cost, and to use capital reserve funds to provide matching funds for grants. This would clarify the intent of the capital reserve fund, which has always been high-priority projects for either replacement or repair in place. Article requires a 3/5 vote to pass, and it passed 1,541 to 299. So.
See, I almost think that
that's the
sounds like
language.
75,000 per culvert, though.
Uh,
When you read the
it does say
part, culverts of
culverts-
75,000.
That's the way I
Culverts
Heard
greater
it.
than, culverts plural,
Right.
greater than $75,000.
But
So-
per culvert.
Per culvert.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's nothing there saying we can't do it.
Right, but I'm saying the way I interpret it though is a culvert over $75,000 is acceptable. Under, I interpret it as no. A culvert. Can I see that writing for a minute, Mark? Just.
Yes, you can. Matter of fact, you all can.
Oh, good.
To me, I interpret it as culverts, meaning not to mean I guess to mean like the plural, but not at one time. It would sound like improper grammar to say include culvert greater than 75,000.
Be a culvert greater than 75,000, but that's,
So you're saying,
that's why we're here for the board to decide.
so you're saying anything under 75,000?
Budgeted. That's what I believe. If you go back to the minutes of some of these discussions and through budget advisory, you're going to see that they're going to refer to anything under 75,000 to a budgeted, if I recollect correct. Because the purpose is to make it where if you just had a 12-inch culvert fail under a small section of road that's going to cost you $400 for the culvert, that wouldn't be used out of the capital reserve funds.
Yeah, these are not $400 culverts in either case.
But I'm saying the example had came up
Mhm.
as far as, and I thought, from what I recollect, that's where the $75,000 number came in.
Yeah, that wouldn't make any sense to me. That the way you're portraying it, doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, the culvert's gotta be repaired. And,
Right, but in a budget.
right, so you say let it wait until we budget it next year?
Alls I'm telling you is I believe the interpretation of what this was, and I'm not, contesting to it. I mean, I recollect the discussion being a culvert project for an individual culvert had to reach $75,000 before it was eligible for a capital reserve withdrawal.
How much for these culverts?
The combined cost for both of them is between 80 and 90,000.
How much is Armory Road?
I don't have a breakdown. They're probably pretty similar. The culvert on Ball Hill is smaller, but it's also 10 to 12 feet deep. So that's more excavation and takes more time. The culvert on Armory is larger. I don't know if it's 30 or 36 inch, but it's definitely bigger.
Going bigger, I think it's much smaller than that now. I think.
Yeah, because we've worked on it. So.
Can we hold that part off for a week and just see where it is for clarification on it? Meaning, if you were looking to stack stuff on, not to stack it on, but if it was a quick answer that we could get prior to Monday night's Fifth Monday Forum. I guess I just don't want to go approving something that was against the intent of the original capital reserve.
Yes.
If we repaired these culverts out of regular town funds, not from capital reserve, is there money available?
Not this year.
Not this year?
How bad are these culverts? There's something that can wait another 9 months, or 6 months, or whatever it's gonna be.
Bald Hill probably could. It'd be nice to do Armory.
I'm not going to disagree with that, but I just feel once again a matter of
Yeah,
process.
That's for you all to decide.
Yeah, I mean, reading this, I agree with Chris that the intent is that it's for culverts greater than 75,000 to replace that.
Individual ones?
That's how I read it.
As much as I want to see Armory Road done over, don't get me wrong. The amount of truck traffic that goes over that.
Do you have any guess as to what the implication would be if we postponed it until April or something?
Well, worst case scenario is the culvert fails and we have a permanent detour.
Put a steel-
Yep.
put a
for
steel
6
plate
months.
over it.
Or we steel plate it or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't see any harm in, I don't see much liability letting it ride until we can budget it.
In truth, it's been settling for 3 years, so
Oh,
I
yeah.
guess the one way to look at it is,
Longer than that.
well, I was trying to be nice.
How does that affect snow plowing, though?
It's,
I mean, maybe less now that they've at least filled in the dip. I mean, my car bottomed out.
I think, no worse than some of the other
On-
dips in
on our road.
town.
Yeah, it shouldn't be, I don't see a problem. Shouldn't have any effect on the snow plowing at all.
So wait.
Do Jocelyn and then put it in the regular budget.
But I guess if we could get an answer for it, a clarification before next Monday night, and I guess if for some reason it says that it's, I don't,
I'm not sure who you're gonna get clarification
Right.
from.
I
Okay.
read it as an individual.
So that seems to be the consensus.
Yeah, all right, we'll wait. Okay.
Okay. Next, we have the review of the purchasing and procurement policy. Town administrator had gone forward and did what we asked and put some changes in section 6 under the
I think
proc.
it's even highlighted for us.
It is. Easy to find.
Thank you very much.
So basically, 0 to 7,500 stays the same. B, greater than 7,500, the town administrator shall have full authority to approve procurement of goods and services provided such goods or services are identified within the town's budget. And then on C, that the board is required to procure goods and services in excess of 25,000, which another otherwise approved in the budget. And then this is added, or when the low bid is not recommended by staff. The town administrator will provide an overview to the Board of Selectmen for approval of capital purchases, buildings, improvements, vehicles.
Hey.
And
There's two versions.
that was option 1. Yeah, go ahead.
No, that's actually option 2.
That is?
Option
Oh,
1.
too far down. Sorry
Option
about-
1 ended with, or when the low bid is not recommended
Yep.
by staff.
Yeah,
And the rest of it is kind of cleanup under request for proposals. The Appendix A, number 4, we corrected in at least 1.
Right.
And we also added under bid award, recommendation shall be made to the Board of Selectmen for approval if the preferred vendor is not the low bidder. And then for option 2, we made all of those changes, and in addition, for the section 6C, greater than $25,000, we added the language that the town administrator will provide an overview to the Board of Selectmen for approval of capital purchases, building improvements, vehicles, et cetera, prior to the expenditure. This is something that Selectman Levanti had requested, so I decided, what the heck, we'll give you 2 options. You can tell us which one you like.
I can add a couple. questions.
Add a couple?
Well, no, I
Oh,
just,
okay.
I actually just want to put a couple statements into it.
Okay, go ahead.
What I've done in the meantime is I've pulled purchasing policies from multiple towns around us. Anywhere from Amherst to Brookline to farther away to Exeter, Hollis. You take a lot of them that are comparable to us. And going back to what I'm going to say, what I believe the original one to be, along the lines of up to the 7,500 to the 25,000 and then above 25,000. Every town in here has that. I guess I feel going forward with any of these corrections, to me, I'm just a believer that it should go back to the board. I called NHMA today. I spent some time on the phone with an attorney from NHMA. And I just wanted to verify a couple things. You know, a lot of it going through as far as if it's in the budget. SB2 town, what the voters are approving is they're approving a bottom line number. They're not approving the vehicles. So to go back to the statement that was made to me as far as the vehicles were approved through the voting, they were not. It was the numbers. Ultimately, I was kind of told what I had mentioned before as far as that the voters approved the bottom line. It's the responsibility of the selectmen. The selectmen, you could have a warrant article for $185,000 for a new town truck. The selectmen could say we couldn't find a suitable thing for it. We do not have to expend the money, even though the voters approved the money. They gave us the ability to do it. They didn't say we had to do it. So I guess where I'm going on a lot of this is I feel it needs to come back to the board the way that it originally was. And like I said, you can feel free, and I can make copies or email you the links to all of these. I actually feel that Milford being generous of having a department head going to 7,500, the town administrator to 25,000, and then above that, the Board of Selectmen. Many of the towns in there basically say anything over $5,000 will go to the Board of Selectmen. Granted, there is exceptions in there, obviously, as far as stuff that we had talked about, whether it be road salt, reoccurring stuff of that nature. But I guess I feel going with the new one, I'm not in favor of either option. I would like to see something back. The other thing that they also suggested is that before we approve any of it, we ship it to town council.
I don't know that we necessarily need to follow what every other town does. I have a little bit of a problem shipping everything to town council when, it runs up the legal bill. And it's our policy. So, I mean, we can decide what it is. Those towns have decided that that's what they want.
I also feel that being a selectman, we have like the stewardship to oversee the financial aspects of the voters. And as a board of selectmen, to allow department heads and town administrator to approve things on a vast level higher than what surrounding communities and other communities. I'm not just going to say surrounding. What I'm going to say is at some point it shows a due diligence on where to do it and how to do it. I guess I feel the only thing that is going to change, I'm not saying that it keeps a leash, per se, on the money, but all that's going to do is if everything is going to come by, and I'm going to say it's a checks and balance game. If it's going to come in from a department head with a request, it's going to come to the town administrator. Town administrator is now just going to pop it on the agenda, say, yep, this, and this. It's going to be a simple vote. It's not like it's going to take us time. It's not like there's going to be hundreds of these a year that are going to be coming to the board by any such means. And I guess I feel by us trying to shrug it off and say, we have other things to do. I guess I just feel, maybe our priorities aren't right. We have issues that come to the board on, can we spend $500 at the transfer station on signs? Can we approve a Boy Scout bike rack going on the Oval? I guess I feel, I welcome all of those coming to the board, is what I'm trying to say. I'm not saying they have to, but I guess if we're going to have the $500 one come to us and we're not going to have the $60,000 and $70,000 one come to us, I don't feel that there's the oversight there that should be had.
Okay, and I don't think it's that we are saying, that we're saying we're not interested. I think the way that it was set up was for expediency, because if on a Tuesday, they found out they needed to spend some money because of some emergency or something, then, I mean, it's either call the board back, which you need a 24-hour notice, or you've got the
And in most of these, there's the provisions for emergencies.
again, it's time, but it's up to you guys.
I personally think that we do have oversight. We look at the manifest. At least, I did it last year, and I don't remember who's doing it this year.
You. I think you are.
No, I am.
Oh, you are, sorry, I'm sorry. Hi.
But when I was doing it, I went through every single invoice, looked at all the different things, and provided good oversight on it.
So,
And,
to go with that comment, because that was brought up at the last meeting, and I did try and take that into consideration. I went into finance today, and I actually looked through the manifests. And I guess I feel at that point now, basically what you're doing is you're putting one selectman in charge of the manifest to verify anything that's going to happen. And I'm going to put it, there's been boards over the years that selectmen felt they didn't want to spend the time at the table. And I guess when you look at it, I know the time I spent looking at that manifest today, I actually had them pull some invoices for me just to see what the process was like, to see what it's going to involve for time. You could create a 30-hour-a-week part-time job doing that stuff, pulling manifests, checking numbers. I guess I just feel it's a much faster process to have it come to the board. You know, it's going to literally be, I'm going to call it most of them a simple solution, a simple thing. No different than tonight, than you know, the town clerk coming before us saying, you know, we need more, more help. I don't understand what the difference is.
2 weeks.
Then maybe it's time we go back to a weekly meeting. I guess I feel here, and this is one of the things that, I guess when I ran for selectman, my thing was I was willing to put the time in. If it's a case that the board feels it's too much time, then maybe we need to change the structure of the board.
No, I think it's a matter of balancing the time versus giving our employees the opportunity to do their job without micromanaging what they're doing.
This isn't micromanaging, though, Gary.
It is, because that's...
How is it micromanaging?
This is the reason that this was set up.
Okay.
I was here when it was set up, because the board had to approve every little thing. This was back in mid 2000, early 2000s. But, you know, everything had to come to the board. I mean, we were here till 1 o'clock in the morning, going over things. And, you know, it got to the point where it said, you know, this is, why don't we just, we hired a town administrator, we're paying them good to take care of the day-to-day activities of the town. Why not just give them the authority to do that? We'll watch the bottom line. That's what the voters voted.
Apparently, Gary, though, we haven't been watching the bottom line on a lot of the things, and this is a lot of where I'm going to. As far as oversight, select board, there's only so many numbers that they can follow. Am I wrong? Meaning, there's so many numbers that you can see. You can see the number for the budget coming in. My question that I asked tonight to the auditor, which apparently was the wrong way to ask it, and I guess I'm going to ask the rest of the board. No, I have yet to been able to get an answer. Why the heck did we not know we were out $9 million? Nobody has been able to answer me that on checks and balances, on why we didn't know we were out $9 million, Gary. Is anybody at the table willing to give me an answer? Or even, I'll even go a step farther. Is anybody willing to help me to say, how are we going to do this so it doesn't happen again?
I think we have taken steps already to address that. You know as well as I do, there's non-public information.
I'm not looking to go into non-public. I'm not
Understand,
looking
but
to go any
that's where some of your answers lie, and I'm not going.
But it doesn't, Gary. Some of the answers go into, and it's just the way we've discussed in a lot of different things. We have a system set up for checks and balances. You know, and don't feel I'm throwing you under the bus on this, Mark, when I say this. But ultimately, you say we have a town administrator for this. Our town administrator didn't know we were out $9 million. I guess where I'm going at,
You think changing the purchasing policy is going to make a difference on that?
on the $9 million, not necessarily.
I'm not even sure if it was 9 million.
We bonded $9 million in June. It was $7 million we got for a TAN loan, but it was $9 million we bonded.
All right, I'm gonna detail the $9 million, because you're blowing this out of proportion.
It's not that I'm blowing it out, Mark. You're not understanding. Hold on one second.
He was speaking.
I was speaking.
Go ahead,
You
Mark.
interrupted me. The $9 million, if you take 2018, the year we just audited, and the current year, that's $6 million out of the $9 million. 2017 was 2.3.
Mm-hmm.
Most of that was roads. And 2016 was 924,000. So you're asking me, why didn't I know? Well, 6 million of that was for either the year we just audited or the current year. So why didn't I know about 2 million that wasn't bonded? Well, as the auditor said, many towns pay for those things using exactly what we did, the fund balance that's available to us, and we could easily pay $2 million and then do the bond later on. So this was not that unusual, and you're blowing it out of.
I'm not blowing it out of proportion, Mark. You think I'm going on the attack over you? I'm not looking to attack anybody. Alls I'm trying to do is prove a point on oversight. You know, as far as to go with your comment, Gary, on here till 1 o'clock in the morning, I'm not looking to approve $500 purchases. To me, when you're bringing to the board, how many purchases, there's not a whole bunch. I guess I didn't see any on that manifest that were over $25,000. So I guess what I'm trying to say is it's not like there'd be, you know, there'd be like a small amount that's going to come to the board ultimately. And to me, if all these other towns, which some of them have been revised up until 2019, meaning recently, it's not like they're outdated. And a lot of these, I'm not even looking to go down to the limits that these are. A lot of these have it where employees can only spend $300, meaning as far as department heads. That's not what I'm looking for. I was content with the numbers that were had at 7,500, 25,000, and over 25,000. But I guess I just feel to have this many, and this was just a simple Google search on purchase policies in New Hampshire towns. You're not going to tell me that I guess what makes our town so much better that we don't need oversight.
We have plenty of oversight.
Like, we have a lot of things in town that aren't verified that should be. And I think that basically what I'm saying is we need to start verifying everything.
Examples of what aren't verified.
Purchases of vehicles. You say they're in the budget. They're not in the budget. The number's in the budget. You know, to me, verification. Perfect example in the DPW truck, $72,000, $60,000 in the budget. So they came and they said, we want to do it. Well, at what point, I guess you gave the authorization for them to dispose of their vehicle for $12,000.
That was discussed by this board.
I understand, but you had came to us prior and said, it doesn't even need to come to you. You did end up bringing it to the board.
No.
Yes, Mark. Don't no me.
Don't make me mad.
Either way, wherever I'm going, it just ultimately, I guess I spoke my opinion to it. I personally feel that we need to revise it back to what I'm going to call the original intent of what the document was.
Thank you.
I don't think I have to defend the vehicle purchase that was brought to the board. This board approved it. They knew what was being traded in, and we're just regurgitating the same stuff, meeting after meeting after meeting.
Okay. Getting back to the policy itself. Any comments from anyone else?
I do have one more comment, or question, if I could ask it.
Yes.
Wastewater utilities, water utilities. What is their purchase policy?
I'd have to look at it. I don't remember off the top of my head.
But you guys approve vehicles, equipment.
Yeah, well, yeah, but once we've approved it in the budget, they go ahead and get them.
So Kevin just does whichever, like when it gets approved in March, you're saying, at the voting.
No, he'll come to us and say, here's the 3 options, what do you think?
And it's ultimately decided by the Board of Governors.
Any further comments on the procurement policy?
It's commissioners, I'm sorry, Mike.
I don't want you to get confused with.
I'm not trying to confuse them.
What is your pleasure on?
I'm in favor of the short version on version C, where it just says when the low bid is not recommended by staff. But I would be okay with the other version if other people prefer that one.
Yeah. Thoughts?
I'm fine with option 1.
Yeah, fine with option 1.
Okay.
I make a motion that we approve option 1, which is the one that has 3 lines on section C. As
No,
opposed-
that's option 2.
Says at the bottom of the page. Option 1.
Yeah, option 1.
Second.
Okay. Can you read, I guess?
Let me read. It
Yes.
says, C, greater than 25,000. Approval of the majority of the Board of Selectmen is required for the procurement of goods and services in excess of $25,000, which are not otherwise approved in the budget, or when the low bid is not recommended by staff.
Okay. That is the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Selectman Duziak. Any further discussion? Already had it. All those in favor of that motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay.
Nay.
Vote is 4-1 with Selectman Labonte opposed, and the motion passes. The next item on here is the dispatch discussion. We are currently scheduled to meet with the towns next Monday night. My question simply is that, do we want to continue to meet, or do we want to wait to get some input back from the consultant?
What specifically would you want to meet with them about?
Probably the only things that we would be going over are those things that, in the IMA, that we had disagreements with, things like voting rights.
I don't know, I'm in favor of waiting to see.
And I mean, I'm not saying that we have to wait until December 16th.
No, I don't think we can wait that long either, but I think it's
I'm just-
premature to meet with them.
I'm just trying to look at the productivity of the meeting.
We're just gonna, Monday, we're gonna meet with them anyway.
Well, I think
All
that's,
right.
Well,
I think
that's
that's
the
what he's
question.
trying to
That's the
determine
question.
whether
Do-
we
do
should
we
meet with
still
them or
wanna do
not.
that?
I'd rather wait for consultant input, but
Well, we still gotta work on the IMA. We should be ready for that.
I'd recommend that you contact the chair of the 2 boards and ask what they'd like to do. If they want to meet, I think we ought to meet, just to keep things open, even if there's really not much to talk about.
Okay, yes.
I agree with Selectman Putnam. I personally believe there's a whole bunch to talk about. I don't understand how there's not anything to talk about. I guess I'll ask the question then. So if we put a warrant article forward, if the decision comes out and says we want our own dispatch, so what is option 2 you're going to put as a warrant article on? If warrant article 1 fails, the first one. I guess to me, no matter how you look at it, you have to look at an IMA. You have to discuss it. And in my eyes, and I'm going to give you my opinion on it, I feel if we're not going to discuss an IMA with them, then why don't we just tell them that we don't have interest? Because that's the image we're projecting to them.
Well, I don't think we have all the information on which to make an informed decision yet, so.
It wouldn't be an informed decision if you're trying to negotiate the IMA.
haven't we already had 2 meetings, though, discussing the IMA with them?
We had one.
I thought we had another one when I was.
We had a previous one that just talked about generalities and where towns were on whether they thought they could get a warrant article passed or not, whether it'd be acceptable to the people in their town, and whether they were willing to pay their respective share of a $2.1 million solution.
I guess one follow-up on that, I guess directed to Captain Fry as a Board of Governor at MAC base, would there be interest in having an IMA discussed? Meaning, would MAC base, do you feel, benefit from having an IMA discussed, and whether you want to call it the start of negotiations? Is it better off doing that instead of waiting for results from a consultant and then not knowing which direction we're going to be in? Is it going to be put under a time crunch? When does MacBase need an answer if we're going to continue or we're going to pull out?
Well, the IMA is December 31st.
December 31st.
But that's for a year pullout. I can't remember how long the IMA is currently for. But we have a meeting Wednesday where, and it's been like this for several meetings, the first question they ask is, where are we with the RFQ? So I presume that they're waiting for Milford to do something, where my question was going to be for Wednesday, and I guess we can put it out there for public now. What are we doing as a board to rebuild communications?
Which is where I'm going with that statement.
Which basically has nothing to do with any of the selectmen yet. It has to do with, are we going to put forward a $3 to $6 million plan for regional dispatch to rebuild what we have? But we haven't, speaking as a taxpayer, Milford again is really the only people that are doing anything to help out the situation.
I think part of where I'm going at this, and correct me if I'm wrong, I believe the current IMA ends at the end of 2020. So basically, the end of this year will be putting in your year's notice if you didn't want to continue with it. I guess, so hypothetically speaking, if we approve a warrant article even in March, we're still going to be with MacBase longer than 2020, correct?
I presume so.
The odds of you instituting
About
a
a
brand-new
year.
communication center in 9 months probably isn't there. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, no matter what, you got to look beyond.
I thought the current IMA ended at the end of 19.
No, I think that's when the year's notice came in.
2020.
Okay. Stand corrected. Yes.
One significant point that we've not discussed as a group is what kind of voting would we agree to in terms of a new MAC-based agreement. I'm personally very much in favor of having Milford have 71%, that the voting be proportional to the amount of money that whatever group puts into it. I don't know how the other board members feel on that, but they gave the impression that if we were firm on that, then that would be like a deal killer, and that they would want to explore other opportunities. So if we are in agreement on that or not in agreement on that, it would be good to put that up front. So, because that's a major point.
I guess with all things aside, I guess one way to look at it is if we had 71%, I don't know if I'd be right in using the term, there's not even a democracy there, is there? That's basically us, we're telling them how it's going to go.
We would have majority voting rights, that's correct.
So you could ultimately, at that point, you could say, we're going to upgrade the infrastructure, you're in the contract, you guys are liable for, 28% of the upgrade for everything, and we decided you're going to do that. You don't have an option other than to pull out of the IMA.
On the other hand, if we saw something that was going to be beneficial to our 71%, they could vote against it, and it wouldn't happen.
That becomes, I believe, the rule of what they call give and take. Like, you have to have give and take to make something work. I believe the other towns made it clear they would still be fine with us having 50%. I know you brought up the fact if we brought in another member town. I think that your concern was valid. But I think because we have this tool on what I call, we can negotiate the IMA, that if it's brought in, and I'm just loosely throwing it out there, depending on the percentage that they pay, as long as we are still, let's say they brought in somebody that's going to be 6%, you were worried about them getting their own vote and making it where all the other towns could outvote us. That's what I'm talking when I say negotiate, as far as the IMA, that you could still have it where Milford still retains 50% of the vote.
Only if we're able to control the majority vote.
I'm saying if Milford would still have 50% voting rights, I'm taking the number 2 votes out because you would have to go off percentage if that at that point, not numbers of votes. The only way that you're going to get it where the other towns are going to tie your vote for say, and I guess I feel that if we're looking for something that, let's say that another town who came in, so there's 3 other towns beside us, if they all voted against us, chances are the likelihood if they all vote against us, it's probably not a good deal.
Let me just bring this up. We're just discussing should we meet with the other town or shouldn't we? We're getting into the discussion.
But the thing was, if we meet with them, what are we going to talk about? That was the question that went with it. This is where I'm trying to say IMA negotiations.
Right, exactly, and I agree with you. So we invite them to next Monday's meeting, like we'd planned on originally.
But I think we have to bring it to the table with IMA discussions, because if we're not, and we're just going to walk, into the room, we're all going to look at each other and go,
No, you're right. We should be talking to them about the IMA. Negotiating with them.
Yeah, I think we tried that last time.
I think the last meeting we had was actually exceptional with the other towns. I think there was a lot of agreeing points out of it. I think there was actual mutually good discussion between us.
No, there was a lot of it, but I identified a number of sticking places too that were deal breakers. So.
But every side's going to have a deal breaker on everything, though, Gary. Meaning that
I'm fine if you want to meet. We'll just continue to do that.
Are we at a point where we can decide whether we're going to go with 50% votes or 71% votes?
I think we need to decide, are we gonna make Mac base work, or are we just gonna start our own and do whatever they wanna do? They can go do what they want. We need to make that decision and then follow that path.
I personally feel we should have already made that decision, because if we did, we could have saved half the money on the RFQ, because we could have just had them do the RFP. Not to take money away, but,
Well, hence my question as to whether we're prepared to go into this without information from the consultant. I mean,
What kind of information do you need?
well, I don't know. You've got a guy running off doing $85,000 worth of work here. If we're going to decide that we're going to go over here by virtue of an IMA, then what's the purpose in,
we knew
Spending
that with
that
the Warren article, though, Gary.
well,
And I guess, have we approached the other towns and said, hey, look, maybe as a three-town board, meaning three-town commission, we look into something? I don't know that question's been asked, and maybe it has, meaning prior to me being on the board.
what do you mean, look into something?
Whether it be the same concept of, I'm not saying to go through and do this now, I'm asking if the question has ever been asked on hiring a consultant, whether it's identify the problems, identify each town's issues, and it would have been paid for respectively by the member towns.
I don't know that question has been asked, but I certainly have mentioned to the chairs the need for them to determine what they need to make communications work. One town doesn't need anything. We needed more than everyone else. There's another town that hasn't done anything, and they're waiting for Milford. That was their response to me.
And that's what I was talking about. I mean, I don't think Mac Base, as the board, has looked at that.
Have we ever had our Board of Governor bring it to the table up there and say, this is what we'd like to do? I propose doing X, and I don't know where to fill in X on what it is.
Nobody's ever decided on X. I mean, for me, it's a pretty simple question. Are we willing to work with the other towns, and like we have been for the last 30 years, or do you just want 100% control? I mean, that's it. Either you're gonna work with them like a partnership and not demand total 71% control, which is, you might as well just take 100% at that point, or are we gonna start our own and take the 100%?
If it costs us more to stay with Mac Base than go alone, and not even talk about the regional, is that a prudent thing to do? And what reason do you stay together if it's going to cost the town more? What justification do you give the constituents as to why we should spend extra money just so that we could stay together?
Sorry, Mike, go ahead.
We have the system in place. We need some more antenna locations. I don't want to do your job for you. Basically, we've got antenna locations already established, just needs new equipment. Need to establish a couple of more antenna locations and take care of the police first, because the police need, just off top, I'm going to say 9 antennas to dispatch from, and we've got 4 already. But the ambulance might only need 3 So we don't have to put money in every antenna location to cover the ambulance. And the same thing with fire. So we do police first. Get their 95% up and running. We've already got the consoles, we got a lot of the infrastructure up there. So that's gonna save us money. We're not reinventing the wheel, and we're taking care of the police department's issues.
But you're right, the infrastructure's upstairs. It's not outside. That's the problem.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's
The
gonna be
antennas,
cheaper.
Mike, I understand that, but it's, you're, Chris is talking about one thing about regional. You're talking about just fixing Milford Police. That's where we kind of, everyone sort of throws out their opinions where Mac Base should be looking to fix everything at once.
That's
The
just
bond, how many times can you go to the well before the well's dry?
But why should we be buying equipment that we don't need? Why should we be establishing equipment
But that's what,
in locations?
that's what he's here for. Not for you to decide. It's for him and their company. They're the experts. They're the ones that are gonna tell us what equipment needs to be out there, what antennas need to go where. When you look at Mac Base, I don't know what, I know that Wilton they have problems,
Yes, they do.
but I don't know where they need to put antennas to fix their problems. And that's why you asked me, has the boards ever, as far as I know, they've never come together with like, okay, here's an RFP or an RFQ, RFP, to say, how much does it cost to fix a regional system that needs to be replaced or fixed or upgraded, whatever you want to say it. There's a money tied to it. And that's what they're gonna partially look at. I don't think they're gonna be building antenna sites in Wilton. I mean, we know Mount Vernon's fine, but that's where we're kinda, I mean, I wish it were that simple. I mean, I like how you're saying it. I mean, I think that if it was that simple, it'd be great, but it's not. It's not as simple as that. And if we keep saying, okay, well, Milford, we need to come up with another 71% this year to add to another warrant article, eventually they're going to say, why didn't you just do this all together at once? I mean, that's been the crutch of Milford since I was a kid. Listening to my father saying, how many times are we going to vote on this and add more money when we should have done it right the first time?
And I think
It's a difference between what's right. You got your opinion as to what's right. I got my opinion to what's
No,
right.
I'm
He's
just
gonna
saying
have
about
his
asking
opinion,
the
he's gonna have
taxpayers to
his
pay
opinion.
for it year and year and year after and year after for warrant articles.
But they're not paying a whole bunch of money just to fix everything at once. They may be paying half the amount of money by paying it year to year to year. Because we're not putting in all
But that's if-
infrastructure.
but- And that's if it gets approved year to year to year.
I think that's one of the points that all the boards have agreed on, is that everything needs to be fixed so that everything works. Not
gentleman knew.
not in a step approach.
And like,
Probably tell us.
I guess just to clarify my statement that I made as far as when I said the Board of Governors, has the board ever had the Board of Governor bring it back to the governors to basically sit and do what the town of Milford is doing right now? I understand there's an expense to it, and I guess what I'm trying to say is it doesn't necessarily need to be, you say how many times you have to bring it back to the voters to approve the money. Whether we approve one warrant article in March, if it goes in the way of Milford Communications, or we approve one warrant article in March to fix the infrastructure we have now, I guess I feel that the dollars and cents, I don't want to say are going to be comparable.
No, I mean, like, if we ask for 250,000.
I understand where you're going there, but I guess my point I'm trying to put out is to, I always ask for direction on this, if I'm going in the wrong way. We have the right to ask Captain Fry to bring back to the Board of Governors to make a motion to say, hey, why don't we get an RFQ, whatever letters, numbers that they are, together to find out a solution to the problem. We've never done that. This is where it always goes back to the question I've always asked. What's the procedure when you have a radio that doesn't work?
It has been done.
That's my question. That's
I thought 4 years ago when we had this discussion, that's what was brought up. Finally, Beltronics did that for Mac
Yes.
Base. And if Mac Base is basically the Board of Governors, so Beltronics came and did a assessment for Mac Base at the time.
Right, because, and it was just police only, because Milford Ambulance didn't have any problems, Milford Fire didn't have any problems.
So I think what happened was, our town did not like that solution, pretty much, because we felt like it's a Band-Aid. But I think what you're asking for, Mac Base did look into that. They had Beltronics look at it. They came up with a solution. I believe the town voted against that solution.
They just,
Or it just
they
never
never
got to
made,
that
they
town.
never made a
And then when we
decision.
got to that big meeting with everybody involved, then it got kind of, it went wrong, that big Basically, it was Milford's trying to take control of the situation. And I think that's where it's been ever since.
And I guess that's what I'm trying to do, is try and break that barrier there as far as if they came up with a solution in the past. And I'm not saying it's a viable one now. I'm not trying to say, I agree with Captain Fry on it. It's not my place to say, buy this, buy that, do this. It's not in my realm of what I do. But I guess what I'm trying to say is at some point, so if the board didn't like it then, when it came back to the board from the Board of Governors, do you just give up, or do you go back and say, no, I think, why don't we try this instead? You know, I guess I'm asking for history out of this. Is what communication has there been going back and forth with the Board of Governors?
I think the philosophy is different. I think the philosophy with the other two towns are different than the philosophy that we have. People want to do it in sections. We felt like sections is not going to work. We felt like that's another Band-Aid, which it's just going to be an ongoing problem. I think that was the issue, is the philosophies were different across the board.
Maybe historically, in the recent meetings that I've had as far as talking with them, I got the impression out of them, Mount Vernon's big concern is how much money do you have to come up with at once? They were okay with, they made the insinuation, I don't want to speak for them, that they were okay if it became a 10-year bond. They knew they were paying it back over 10 years.
But it's the same, and going back to Selectman Dargy, what he's talking about earlier, at that meeting, last meeting I heard was basically, we need to come up and say, this is what we want. I think they don't want to waste their time either. That's kind of what I heard at the last meeting. If we come up with our solution, say we want the 71% or whatever it is, whatever these things are, that the no deal, basically, we have to decide as a town, what is our deal? Because they don't want to come here Monday and sit there and listen to us go, well, we want 71%. It's no more. That's what they said. I think this board has to say, this is where we're going. Are you on board or not? The 50-50, if that's what you decide, they might buy in, but they might not. I don't know. But as a taxpayer also, I feel like the assessment we're doing now, it's got to be mostly from the town of Milford. I don't want to pay for the town of Wilton. Nothing against the town of Wilton. We shouldn't be paying for that. The taxpayers should not pay for that. We should pay what's best for this town. And I think sometimes we worry about the other towns a little too much when it comes to getting this thing done. I mean, bottom line is, they've known this issue for 4 years now. 4 or 5 years, I guess.
But
and that's the history of it.
I think that could get beaten in both directions, though. We've known there's a problem as far as the town of Milford, and what have we done in the last 4 years? We know there's solutions that we can put out there to rectify the problems, and we haven't done them.
Personally, I think the problem is we've tried to work with the other towns. We tried to come up with a solution to have everybody involved. Personally, for me, I feel like it's never going to get solved, this solution, if we have everybody involved. That's just based on the 4 or 5 years I've been involved with it. You're never going to come up with that perfect answer that everybody's going to be involved. Mount Vernon, they don't have any issues. Why are they going to spend $100,000 to fix something that's not broke? If I was a taxpayer there, I probably would say, why are we doing this?
But that could be spread the other way, too, that going with a Milford-only solution, there's, a lot of what I hear out of what you're saying is Milford only is the viable solution. But if you look at historical data on Milford, we have a tendency of buying things and not taking care of them. So why is it that we're going to spend all this money on a communication infrastructure in the town of Milford? Why are we gonna update it?
I hope we would. I guess the oversight that we've talked about all night will be there.
Well, it's not in the rest of the town, so I don't know why it would
Yeah.
start there. Yeah, I guess is my question. And I've asked this.
I have faith in our employees. I have faith in our department heads. I have faith in the board, and I have faith in the citizens. And I think if we don't take care of it, it's going to fall on us. If we go out and spend $2 million and we don't take care of it, I think the taxpayers and everybody else is going to come on us. And we're going to have to answer for it.
I don't disagree, but on the same note, you're going to have to answer for it, but it's also after the fact. Where do we go from there? Because once you already pull out, MacBase no longer exists to go back to. It's not an option.
That's fine. We'll get the job done. I mean, you have to. It's public safety. It has to get done.
I'm not disagreeing, but that brings me
No, I know.
back to my comment like I've asked before, and I asked this all through budget advisory last year. If we have a solution that we could fix our communications gap right now by putting repeaters in the car, even if it cost $100,000, why wouldn't we spend that $100,000 for officer safety? One incident saved.
Mr. Bender?
Just commenting about Milford never upgrades systems is a grossly unfair generalization. We just finished a phone upgrade. We continually upgrade our IT systems. We're looking at upgrading the town hall HVAC system. We just upgraded the electronic locks at town hall. We're continually looking at upgrades. And you come up with a blanket statement that we don't take care of anything.
I guess just to clarify where I'm going on that, is we had to get a special road bond, Mark. What I'm trying to say is it's great, yes, I'm not saying that we can't take care of it, but look at the condition our roads and bridges got into, and that's a discussion that's been had for, the whole time you've been here. You've been here for the discussions. Our DPW fleet, which I completely agree. I think everyone at this table agrees the fleet needs to be updated. But once again, it's not always. I don't fault the employees of the town, the department heads, the town administrator. I mean, there's no such finger pointing that you can put it at on where it goes. Unfortunately, it depends how it lines up as far as budget season, what gets put where.
And ultimately, it's the taxpayers that decide. If it's a road bond, we put that out there 3 years ago and needed 60%, and we got it. So taxpayers supported it.
But I think going back to the original point where we were, I guess it's unfair to say, Gary made an implication that why should we stay with MacBase if it's going to cost us more? Do you know it's going to cost us more?
No.
Okay, those are the comments I'm saying. We need to stop those.
Gary, have you talked to the other boards and invited them to come on Monday?
Yes. That was an invitation that we all set up at the last meeting.
All right, well, then just keep that on the agenda then.
Yeah. Do have one question for either Captain or the Chief, because I've heard this comment a number of times about the Milford could fix their problem by putting repeaters in the car. My understanding is it works for Mount Vernon because they have 2 cars. But when they have the number of cars that we have, wouldn't we be stepping all over each other?
I'll let him do the technical version of it.
Yeah, that's without spending a lot of more money on it. That's what happens. It was explained to me that when you get a whole bunch of cars together, one car has to take over, so that the portable radios go to that one car, so that things aren't stepping over each other. There are examples of repeater systems being too close together, and the car, it's the same city. It was about a mile away. One guy was out on a domestic, the other guy was out, and I have the paperwork, on a dog call, we'll say. The officer's trying to get onto the repeater, but the other guy was on top of his repeater, so he couldn't get out. And that was because it wasn't separated. But they were saying also that Nashua's set up so when several cars get to each other, one car instantly takes over And I don't know how this works. But it instantly takes over as like a command post, and all the cars go to that versus them stepping all over each other. But they have a system that's millions of dollars built in to their radio system. It's a truncated system.
No, I've just
So
heard that
it's-
comment from a number of different people.
But that's what the vendors say.
Okay. Yes.
If I could just comment about dates. I think it's pretty pragmatic that Milford is not going to be pulling out of Mac Base or telling Mac Base that we're pulling out December 31st, 2019. So we're going to go into 2020, hopefully with one or multiple warrant articles. We're going to get to a point in 2020 where the IMA is going to have to be renewed, or we're going to have a completely new IMA. So at some point, it's going to come into the same way it did this year. At the 11th hour, we're going to sign a contract to continue with Mac Base unless we do something beforehand. And I think the point that Paul was making is there are some of these items in the IMA that this board should make a decision on going into that negotiation. If you feel strongly about 71%, well, is that something this board wants to vote on tonight? Or are you going to wait until Monday night and have the negotiations then and then vote? And that's, I just use voting as one example. There are
To
other
me,
items in that.
I would like to vote on it, because if it's 4-1 or whatever, then we're done, you know, in terms of talking about it. And if everybody wants to stick with 50%, that's fine. But if three or more people want to go with 71%, we got to tell them that. So I'm in favor of the 71%. So maybe poll the board and see what other people want.
I'll go second. I'm not in favor of 71%.
No, I'm happy with the percentages the way they are now. It works out perfect. All done by population. And again, we use more than what we pay for. We get pretty good service from up there with no problem. And we're only, like you said, we're only paying for 71%. Manpower and everything's pretty well controlled up there, staff and whatnot. I can see it coming into town. And we're taking it over, and that thing's just gonna grow and grow and grow. That's the way things happen in this town.
I don't think the other towns are ever gonna go for that, so.
Go for
That's true, but I could see us, you know, having a Milford solution and then have them as customers. So it's still a regional solution, it's just managed differently.
Yeah, but if
No,
we get them as customers.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
I just think that that's gonna be the end of the discussions, if that's what we say.
Well, that's true, but it'd be, if that's the way we're headed, then let's tell them that. If it's not the way we're headed, then that's fine. Right?
Yeah, but it's pretty much if we own the system and they're customers and they're having problems, it's gonna become our problem instead of their problems.
Well, if there's a Mac base, then it's a common problem, so it really doesn't change anything.
Right, if they're customers, then
Yeah.
it's their responsibility to fix their equipment, not the town of Milford.
Depends how it's written.
Depends on how it's written, yeah.
I think that's putting the cart before the horse, so meaning we have no idea how it would be written out.
Well, we do. We've investigated how other dispatch centers.
Okay, the
look
board,
at-
me, I don't know. There.
Right.
All right, let's sit down and talk with them Monday. Bring them in Monday, let's hash some of this shit out with them. Excuse my French.
Beep.
Hash.
I don't think we have a
Do you have an opinion?
7-second delay, so it's out there.
I think it's early, because if we do 71%,
Could've been worse.
then we having the consultant look into a regional thing for. Regional.
Well, to have them as you could have them as a customer.
Well,
You
that-
can still
yeah.
be a regional solution. You just,
You'd have to get them as a customer first.
yeah.
Right, because there's no guarantee they're gonna come with us. And if they
And I
don't, if they go to
think
other
it's
dispatch
probably unlikely
centers,
they would.
we're gonna end up picking up the tab. I mean, it's a gamble.
All right.
So do we want to have like a consensus on that 71, or where do we just want to leave it where it's at?
I think we already had consensus. I mean, there's a majority that are not supporting it. So, at this time.
Okay. And obviously, anybody can change their mind, I assume, whenever. But I guess I agree with Paul that if everybody was going to say we need 71%, then just cancel the meeting, because there's no sense in.
Yeah.
Okay. Next.
Let's move on.
Moving left, traffic safety concern regarding making Phillips Way two-way. I'm going to recommend we give that to the Traffic Safety Committee.
I will make that a motion
Yeah.
to have them look at it, look at Prospect Street issues, if we do make that two-way, Tenella and Nashua Street, and, oh, you know, Lee? And, look at the whole situation.
Whole area, okay.
Road widths.
Motion by Selectman Putnam, seconded by Selectman Dargy, to give that to Traffic Safety Committee, yes.
This has been coming up every few years as an ongoing thing. What I'd like to do is to get a rough estimate as to what it would cost to make it a true two-way street, to rebuild it to a two-way road. And then perhaps consider making a warrant article to see if the town is interested in doing it. I don't think making it a two-way street when it's only wide enough for one lane of cars on an ongoing basis makes sense.
Yeah, they've been doing it.
Well, we just did it during the construction. It was two ways. But on an ongoing basis, it really should be wide enough, I don't know what the width is, but it should be wide enough to have 2 lanes of traffic go on it.
How much traffic is on that on a regular
I think
basis?
somebody said a count of 200 and something.
243 cars a day.
233 cars a day.
Yeah, but there would be more.
But we
if-
don't know,
if
we
it-
don't know directionally,
There'd be
obviously.
more
If it was two-way,
it was
then,
two-way.
you know, it would be,
You'd
it wouldn't
put
be
a lot more
double, but
traffic through that neighborhood.
say 300 or 400 a day in total, something like that.
I almost feel it doesn't make sense to make it a two-way, because now you're introducing all that traffic into Prospect.
It actually is not that much. I was originally in favor of making it one-way. It was originally designed, it was two ways. And then proposal was made to make it one-way, because the concern was, they thought there's gonna be a real lot of traffic with the big building there. But there really isn't that much traffic. 300 cars a day is not a lot.
But I think you find once you, which direction does it flow in now? Meaning?
Into
It flows in.
from
Yeah, it
Prospect.
heads east.
into-
I think if you make it a two-way street, you will like tenfold your traffic out of there, because if you didn't have to deal with Tenella Road at Nashua Street, why wouldn't you go that way?
A number of
Because you're
people-
heading for Nashua.
Yeah.
It's actually faster to get out and get on the bypass and go down by the time you sit at the end of Tenella.
It's not bad.
It would be fun,
It
but-
really isn't. I've been coming in and out of Tenella Road Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturdays, any hour of the day. I've been every hour of the day. And I haven't had to sit there more than 45 seconds, maybe, tops.
The point is,
It's not that
to
bad.
get a rough guesstimate as to what it would cost to.
I think go ahead and you can get the estimate. I
Not,
mean,
not to do an engineering study, but, you know, someone can
I
go
mean,
in.
it would probably have a bearing on my
Yeah.
vote on that. If we have to spend money fixing this small road, I think there's higher priorities.
Do you want to let traffic safety give that direction direct to get an estimate, or do you want me to just get an estimate?
You should get the estimate.
You
I
got
think
it.
we ought to get an
Traffic
estimate.
safety can look at it from the traffic safety standpoint. All right, next.
Okay. Any other reports from your boards, commissions?
Parking committee's meeting tomorrow.
Anything new?
Not yet. I mean, it's our second meeting.
Well, okay.
We've been taking 2 weeks trying to get a meeting together.
Recycling met, we're still working on revisions to the ordinance. We're looking to try to put together some televised things on composting, things like that, things that we might be able to reduce our solid waste, which would save us money too. But that's pretty much it right now. We've got the Pumpkin Festival coming up, so hopefully we'll get the recycling barrels together with the trash barrels. Tina?
Changed the hours recently at the transfer station. There's a brochure on the website. I don't have access to it. Can you have somebody change the hours on that as well, please?
Okay. Yeah, we're still working on the brochure too. We haven't, we purposely have not put that out so that we make sure that the information in there matches what the ordinance is going to be. But yeah, I'll make a note to have the hours corrected on Friday as well. Anything else?
I do have a question. I don't know if it's just more or less a comment. At the transfer station, when we changed the rate for demo to $140 a ton, didn't we determine that was going to be by the pound?
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up, because that has caused some problems.
Mm-hmm.
I have been notified by one person who wondered why they were getting charged a rounded dollar as opposed to a pound.
I had a couple people ask me, and then the fact of coming over at $140 a ton, coming over a certified scale, how do you round it?
Well, I did a little bit of research on that because there's things I didn't know about the transfer station. First of all, the scale is in 20-pound increments. So if you had 14 pounds, they're going to measure it out at 20 pounds. That's why it worked with 5 cents per pound, is it always came out to a rounded dollar. That doesn't happen if you're charging 70 cents. So I met with Rick and Paul, and they're going to be looking into changing the software so that the software does that rounding automatically, and it's going to come back to the board so that instead of approving a cent per pound thing, we'll approve a range.
Well, I was going to say, meaning as far as coming back to the board's fine, but if we're doing demo charging out at $140 a ton right now, in truth, shouldn't it be $140 a ton? Incremental on all of it.
Doing 7 cents a pound, I thought.
That's
It's
$140 a ton. American tons, 2,000 pounds.
But that works out to 7 cents a pound.
Correct.
Yeah.
But we're not even doing it by the pound. We're doing it in increments.
No.
But see, if I brought over 93 pounds of things, I should be charged $6.51. Right now, I'd be charged $7. But I mean, for one thing, I don't think we really talked about the mechanics of how the transfer station works. Secondly, I think we had a quick, at least, discussion on that we didn't need the director over there having to deal with change. You know, just deal with even bills. So we know we need to do some work on that, but that, my understanding is it would take the software 2 to 3 weeks to get changed. And
That's how we're doing, Paul, as far as variations.
that it would come back to the board to recommend
This is a new
basically a
table?
different scale.
This is an old-
This was revised on 9/11.
Okay.
So when you come out to it in the end, it
Yeah.
still comes out to
Yeah.
$140 a ton.
Yeah.
But because you're incrementalized.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else on reports? There being none, we'll go on to the approval of final minutes for September 9th.